Okay na tayo? Mark, nag-start na?
Yes.
Yan! Woo!
Yun.
Hello, hello, hello! Kamusta mo kayo dyan? Pilipinas. So, tapos na kami dun sa episode ng Yamashita Treasure and Maharlika
Marcos Gold.
Treasure. So ngayon, pag-usapan natin yung real biodiversity treasure ng Pilipinas, which actually could be in trillions of dollars, right? If you look at some of the estimates. So let's talk about things that we actually know about based on scientific studies. And kaya nga, for that reason, today we have really a special guest with us. All our guests are special. But I think this is the first time we have a natural scientist. We have had social scientists, historians. We have had Lord De Vera. I don't know how to classify him as a species. But today we have Lord De Vera is like a Renaissance man. Okay. And today we have no less than Dr. Dio Florence Onda, Associate Professor of Marine Science Institute of the University of the Philippines. Let me tell you, as a UP graduate, I can say that that institute is one of the stars of the UP, which has put us on the global map. And today, actually, we're not here to talk about depressing things, na kawawa tayo, wala tayong laban, hindi nag-jet ski si tatay sa West Philippines. No, but actually, we're going to talk about ano yung mga nagawa natin on the scientific front to uphold our rights, to survey our resources, trillions of dollars of mga isda, mga oil and gas potentially. At para sa issue na yan, we have a very good expert, a top expert in the country and among the best in the world, Dr. Dio Onda. Salamat, Dio, for joining us.
Yes, magandang gabi, Richard, and magandang gabi, Mark.
Thank you for
the invitation.
Para di nila alam, day job. Sabaw na tayo lahat eh. Sabaw na tayo.
Magandang araw pala. Magandang araw.
Okay na, wala na. Salamat.
Salamat,
Deo, for joining us. No, it's really glad. I always love having natural scientists also among us because natural scientists tend to have a different way of approaching questions. No. Than other kinds of scientists or experts and okay, it's really good to have us. From base sa alam ko meron kang record kasi alam ko si Marcos may Guinness Book of Record yan. Alam natin ano yan. Paki-research yung mga hindi alam. Ikaw may record ka. You're the first Filipino to go to the third deepest part of the earth, parang crust of the earth. Can you tell us about that? Anong pinag-usapan? Ano ba ginamit mo dyan? Elon Musk, Tesla, SpaceX ba?
So when we talk about explorations, mostly titingnan natin sa taas, diba? We look up to the moon, to the stars, and to the sky, to the space. Kilala natin dyan si Elon Musk and other astronauts. But the thing is that there's another world down there, and that's the deepest trenches in the world, yung pailalim naman. At the thing with that is that the technology to actually explore these environments, mas mahirap silang gawin at mas mahal kaysa pagpunta ng space. There
Kasi
are
tubig to in the air.
Yes. You're going against the pressure. At mas mahirap siyang kalabanin, the entire pressure of the ocean. So, sa mundo, merong tatlong pinakamalalim na trenches. Yan yung Mariana Trench. Alam natin yan, nasa gitna yan ng Pacific. Yung pangalawa is the Tonga Trench, nasa south ng Pacific. But the third deepest trench in the world is found within our backyard. And that's the Philippine Trench. And the deepest part of the Philippine Trench is called the Emden Deep. Marami ng taong nakapunta doon sa first and second, but no one has attempted to actually visit the third deepest trench.
Bakit?
Primarily, I think because nasa loob siya ng EEZ ng Pilipinas
right.
at mahirap pumasok.
Yeah,
it's within the jurisdiction. Second is that, well, in record setting kasi talagang it's the first and the second, right? Pero ang I think yung magic doon sa Philippine Trench, no one attempted it. No one attempted going there before. At as in wala, even if you go back into the records, wala man na nag-attempt o nag-isip na puntahan siya. So it's very important. The second thing is yung geological characteristics ng area. Yung Philippine Trench is one of the most active, actually. It's moving yung trench na yon because
may earthquake.
But that's also the place where two tectonic plates are actually meeting. So interesting siya. Hindi natin alam, we don't know much about
may Godzilla dan, ganun ba yan para may Godzilla?
Actually nga, I was expecting to see Godzilla or Megalodon or large squids, ganyan.
No, but seriously, Dio, right? I mean, hindi natin alam. The ocean deep is really unexplored. We have no idea what's down there.
Yes,
more unknown than the moon, right? And so
saan part ito ng Philippines located?
So if you sa mapa ng Pilipinas, nasa eastern part siya, no? And Endim Deep is just right across Siargao. So dun parte,
Siargao.
but it's within the EZ of the Philippines. So
200
nasa
nautical
100
miles?
yes.
Right,
Around 100
continental
yung
shelf, easy pa lang.
Hindi.
Easy
Easy pa lang siya. So but that's what makes it actually very interesting. Kasi wala pang nakapunta dun eh. The thing is that we don't know much about the deep oceans. We don't know what's there. Baka nga lang may Italiano gold doon.
No, exactly. That's what I'm saying. Baka tama totoo yung Godzilla and all. Let's just be honest.
Yeah.
Open-minded tayo, di ba, Mark?
Titanic.
But on the
Naisip ko eh.
ecological part din kasi, hindi natin alam yung role ng deep oceans. And when we talk about functioning of the oceans, protection of the ocean, we also need to understand each and every component of the ocean, and that includes the deep sea environments.
Right.
And kukunti lang sa mundong may deep sea. Deep sea pertaining to around more than 10,000 meters. So the deepest trench is around 10,800 meters. So that's 10.9 kilometers. The Philippine deep is around 10.1, 10,100 meters. So there are only a few people who were actually able to cross 10,000 meters below. So that's one of the
parang 10 kilometers ka bumaba, pababa.
Yeah.
Yes. Ang tagal
What did you use?
Ang tagal talaga. So I was invited by this rich guy, si Victor Viscoco, who's been doing record setting all over the world. Number niya, no?
Na mga rich people.
So, he's been doing a lot of record setting. So, nagawa niya na yung 7 summits of the world. Siguro, na-bored daw siya na after he climbed all the highest mountains. Sabi niya, ano nang gagawin ko? So, naisip niya to actually go to the best parts of the ocean. So, he was the guy behind the technology, the only technology that can actually go down to the deepest parts of the world repeatedly. Kasi yung mga ginamit dati ng mga submersible or submarine, once lang sila nagamit eh. Even David Cameron only used his Challenger once at hindi na siya uli nagamit. But the submersible that they developed together with this company called Triton Subs, this is the only IMO certified submersible that can actually go 10,000 meters below and go back and then go down again. So I received this invitation from him a year ago, I think March 2020. And then he invited me. He's like, do you want to do collaboration? You know, as a scientist naman, we always receive invitations to do collaborations. The Philippines is very much limited in terms of ocean research capacity. Alam natin yan. Wala tayong masyadong assets.
Pero may human capital tayo.
Pero may human capital tayo.
Exactly,
and we have a lot of experts. We have very good Filipino experts. But the thing is that kung oceanographer ka at wala ka namang barkong gagamitin, that would be very difficult for you. So in the Philippines, we augment that by actually collaborating with international institutions.
Not with Chinese. Not that much with Chinese friends. Right?
Actually, on the science realm, we believe that science is a very good platform where we can pull people in to talk about issues and work with them. So we are also working with our Chinese counterparts because any progress and any developments in science is also a progress for humanity in general. So we believe in that.
Pero mamaya, pagtaas nyo, may pangalan na Chinese na yung mga... I'm just being brutally honest. Like, you believe in science. Do their scientists also believe in science alone? I have my doubts.
Think that's also the beauty of doing expeditions like this. Kasi kung tayo yung mauuna, we can actually name teachers from galing sa atin, from us. The other thing is that tayo yung nagpapakilala sa mundo, di ba? Nung lumalaki ako, pag tinatanong ako, nasa ng Endim Deep, nasa ng Philippine Trench, honestly, hindi ko kaya sabihin, hindi ko kaya ituro sa mapa eh. But right now, with that expedition, we were also given the platform to also introduce to the Filipino people na actually hindi lang papunta ng West Philippines yung yaman ng Pilipinas, hindi lang sa northeast ng Philippines, hindi lang Benhambak, meron tayong tinatawag ng Philippine Trench, meron dyan Endim Deep, di ba? And we don't know what resources we have there. So I think for me the one of the accomplishments of that expedition is not only to set a record but also to introduce the Filipinos that we have this extended marine heritage we have, which is the Philippine Trench, and hopefully with that mag-spark siya ng interest sa government to invest also
pioneer
scientists. Yes.
So what did you find doon sa Philippine Trench nung bumaba kayo? What did you see? Anong meron ka ba nagulat nung nakita doon? I mean, what did you...
Yeah, as an oceanographer kasi one of the preparations I did is really to do research, what you find, what you'd expect in the Philippine Trench. The thing is that the submersible that we use is non-tethered. Ibig sabihin wala yung tali. So we were independently going down and exploring the area. So there's a lot of risk associated with it. Calculated risk naman. But the thing is, yung task ko sa scientist is to also help the pilot navigate the area and understand what's happening down there. And also instruct him where to go, what things we would want to
yung
find.
Coordinates and all.
Yes, and all of that.
Yeah.
But So hindi naman surprising yung mga nakita doon. The things that we saw were also the things that have been reported in other trenches in the world. But I think for me, one of the most striking thing, merong point kasi doon na parang sabi ko kay Victor was the main pilot. Sabi ko, Victor, there's a jellyfish down here. There's a jellyfish in this direction. So let's go there. Nung palapit na kami ng palapit, I thought it was a jellyfish, but it was actually an intact plastic bag. It's a white plastic bag floating. So that was the first time that was the first floating thing I saw down there. And then after a few minutes, piles and piles of plastic trash. So that's actually one of the things that really pulled me back. That's this is not out of the Earth expedition. I'm actually still on Earth. Imprints of human contamination were here before. So
how long did it take to go down, ba?
Going down, it was 4 hours.
Wow.
And then we had 4 hours to explore down there, and then took another 4 hours going up. So it was very tiring.
12 hours, half a day.
Richard and Mark, there's no toilet in the submersible. So that's really a test of human limitation.
Huwag ka ng plastic sa labas.
Baka yung plastic na nakita mo, yan ang ginamit ng mga dating nauna sa'yo.
Wala ka nauna eh. Kami yung nauna-una na.
Sila nga yung unang-una eh.
So, yeah. So yun yung nakakalungkot because it also tells us how environments are actually connected. Whatever we do on land will always affect something and somewhere, affect an environment down.
What are the possible sorry.
Yeah, even if it's 10,000 kilometers down there.
What are the possible resources dun sa mga trenches? And yun, ano yung mga possible na resources?
Like energy resources.
Madaming mga studies na nagsasabi that because of the depth itself, madami diyang mga metal nodules, no? Iron nodules, possibly
mga precious metals na mahal
yes,
talaga.
Mga precious and rare metals.
Right.
So
rare
yun yung
metals.
mga pwedeng nandun, diba? I don't think sa Philippine trench there would be an oil deposit because it's an active fault. It's an active trench. So walang deposition.
Pero sa West Philippines Sea baka meron, diba? Sa Reed Bank area.
Yes, in the Reed Bank.
Benham Rice. What about Benham Rice?
Sa Benham, we're still exploring. Ang problem sa atin, wala nga tayong resources to actually send anything more than 1,000.
We don't have resources to know how much resources we got, right?
Yes. But we can use those resources. Right? We can use those resources to further explore what resources we have, right? If we just know how to actually use them and sustainably use them.
Dio, kasama ka ba doon sa nag-jet ski sila Baste? Yung papuntang Aurora ba yan? Yung pa-northeast?
Yeah.
Di ba may expedition din?
Yeah. MSI was part of that, but I was not part of that.
Can you also tell us about that? Kasi pumunta rin kayo sa Philippine Rice na ang tawag natin ngayon, di ba?
Yes.
Philippine Rice, Benham Rice. So just to give a background, no? So, we were able to successfully claim it under international law. Our good friend, Attorney Batong Bakal, was one of the people involved in the submission. Because sa international law, meron kang 200 nautical miles exclusive economic zone. Exclusive nga, parang sa relasyon. Pag sinabi mo exclusive, in the open relationship, no? Pero, by the way, pwede ka pa mag-extend all the way to beyond 300 nautical miles. So yung 200, pwede mo almost i-doble yan dun sa extended continental shelf. So na-prove natin na lampas sa 300 kilometers, no? Ay atin yan in terms of exclusive rights to exploit yung mga resources dyan. Of course, pwede dumaan ng ibang bansa dyan, pero hindi sila pwede magtenga-tenga na suspicious, no? So we have so much more on the other side without much of a competition with anyone else, at least on so far, right? And I think that's one of the other big, areas of unexplored untapped resources. So anong nalaman nyo dun sa pinuntahan nyo a few years ago, yung MSI?
I think in general, if you're gonna look at the fisheries production, yung fishing grounds natin, we have two major fishing grounds. That's the northeast of the Philippines and the West Philippine Sea. The northeast of the Philippines contributes significantly to the total capture fisheries production of the country. Ang laki-laki ng fisheries niya. Ang tanong sa amin bilang mga scientists, bakit kaya ganun kalaki yung production? Ganun kadaming isda yung nakukuha natin. And that's where when scientists come in. We need to understand saan ba sila nanggagaling. So if you go offshore, doon sa Benham Bank, sa Benham Rice, there's this structure called the Benham Rice. Para siyang tower. Kaya siya Benham Rice, the Benham Bank. Ngayon doon mo makikita sa pinakamalalim na reef ecosystem sa Pilipinas. We were able to find the reef ecosystem to around 50 meters and deeper. Ano yung significance nito? Because it also tells us na possibly yung mga reef doon sa Benham Bank can actually be producing some of the eggs of the fish that drift to the coast of the Philippines, na pag lumaki sila, yun yung nakukuha natin.
Yun ang nesting nila, nesting area nila.
Yun yung nesting area nila, yun yung source, tawag nating source. So that's one of the biggest ecological, ecological contribution of the area. Aside from that, yung geological importance din ng area. Yun yung hindi pa natin masyadong alam. Alam lang natin nandun yung pinakamalaking kaldera. 'Di ba na-report siya a couple of years ago. So there's
mas malaki sa kaldero ni Cayetano dun sa Southeast Asia.
Sa Clark.
$1 million caldero.
So they call it the Apulaki caldera. It was a Filipino scientist who discovered that. But it also tells us because of the geological activity, probably meron ding mga precious metals or rare metals that can actually be found in the area. But again, wala tayong resources to actually exploit or probably explore them. So
anong mga resources ang need natin to properly explore yung mga resources doon?
And how
human
much?
Resource.
Baka pwede namin tawagin mga oligarch friends namin. Seriously, like how much are we talking about?
That's a very good question. When we talk about human resources, we should be talking about human resource and then also the floating assets mismo. When we talk about human resource, wala tayong problema dyan. We have some of the best scientists in the world. But the thing is that we don't have the vessel to actually go there. We don't have the drill to actually send something and see what's down there.
Formula 1.
Diba? O yun, wala kang Formula 1. Wala kang sasakyan. So when we talk about when we talk about academic research fleet, we're talking about millions and billions of dollars.
Right.
For example, in Canada where I did my PhD, yung investment for research vessels would really get into the billions of dollars.
Billions?
And, yes.
Wow.
Because they have the Arctic. So they need to have the state of the art.
Kalaban nila Russia medyo.
Russia, and then sa kaliwa nila USA,
may Denmark,
diba? And then pumapasok na ang China.
Right.
So and Canada is also trying to extend their continental shelf to North Pole. Yun pinoprove nila ngayon. But alam mo yun, investment science also translates into political jurisdiction. And political jurisdiction will allow you to exploit more resources. So in the long run, ikaw din talaga yung panalo. Yun yung wala tayo pa masyado ngayon. But the good thing is that, kaya nga sinasabi ko din kanina, it's a very good and an opportune time for Filipino scientists in the coming years.
Exactly.
Because in the past years, I think one good thing that happened, I don't know if you've noticed it, but in the past 2-3 years, yung mga scientists mas naging maingay din. We lobbied that if we want to protect the resources we have in the West Philippine Sea, we need to invest in science. And because of after a lot of lobbying and negotiations with the government, we were granted 340 billion for the past year to establish the National Academic Research Fleet. Ano ibig sabihin nito? We are now procuring $4 million research vessels.
Like that.
Something like
that's
that.
Okay. Yeah. That's decent. That's decent.
That's
start.
decent. And
in the time of Duterte, let's be fair. In the time of Duterte, salamat sa critics ni Duterte. All right.
But that also shows you that when you stand your ground and you are on the right track, I think the government should listen to you, and I think that's what the scientists did. So we were granted 340 million to establish the National Academic Research Fleet. Ano yung NARC fleet na tinatawag?
Sino nagbigay ng 300 million? Which agency? Which department?
Yeah, it's the National Security Council. This has
NSC.
the national. Yes, this has
salamat kay General Esperon.
Esperon. Yes.
Yeah. Shout out dyan.
Kita tuloy kami ni General Esperon. Sabi niya, Doc, Onda, nasa na yung mga barko. Tapos parang, sir, nandito na yung mga barko, di ba? Parang, gusto mo pa, ilang barko pa ba gusto mo? Ganyan. So, they are very, I think one good thing is that they really consider that the scientific part of what we're doing in the West Philippines will not only benefit the Filipino people. It is a good initiative on the part of the Philippines to understand the region, the ecosystem, which is a shared heritage of the entire region. So it's a good legacy for the Philippines. So yung academic research fleet will entail procurement of 4 more research vessels. Meron na tayo isa dedicated to Philippine rice, West Philippine Sea, to the Visayan Sea, to the Mindanao Sea, Sulu Sea, Sulawesi Sea. And that's a good thing because we are 82% water. Isipin nyo na lang, 82% ng territory.
I think our coastline is as long as Russia's, right? We're number 5 or 6.
Yes, we are the 5th. We have the 5th longest coastline in the world.
Ilang vessels yung natin? Ilang vessels yung nakapalibot ngayon sa bansa natin?
In terms of
research
vessels.
vessels.
Yeah, pag academic kasi it's university based Meron na tayo And that's also owned by MSI. We procured it in 2019. The first time that we used it was in the West Philippine Sea.
Saan ba
And doon din
ginawa
nakita
yan? Saan yung ginawa yung mga machine na yan? Saan galing?
So meron tayo tinatawag na, yung amin is refurbished. So this is actually an old vessel that we procured from Japan. It was an old yacht, leisure yacht vessel, really designed for diving. Yun naman yung kailangan namin. So we lobbied to the UP system for the longest time. Wala kasing barko ang UP-MSI. Nangihiram lang tayo sa Navy, sa Coast Guard, sa international institutions. Pero yun nga naglilimitahan kasi. Ibig sabihin kung walang barkong maipahiram, wala din tayong labas, wala tayong expedition. Kung wala tayong, ito pa yung mahirap. As sinasabi mo kanina, yung kailangan natin, we need human resources, we also need the floating assets. And now we have the National Academic Research Fleet. But the thing is that expeditions are also very, very expensive. We're talking about fuel, we're talking about food, we talk about ship time, and that could actually run into millions per day. So, kung meron kang resources, meron kang barko, kailangan naman natin i-sustain ngayon yung operations ng barko na yun. We need to make sure that they are running at least 250 days a year. So, ang nangyayari sa mga scientists, what we do kasi, we lobby to the different government agencies. Sasabihin namin, next year po gusto namin ng expedition, ito yung gagawin namin. Pwede may pondo sila ngayong taon, pero the following year, hindi natin alam. Yung head ng agency nagpalit. The previous head was very supportive of the scientists. The next head, medyo hindi. So, na naman yung mga scientists kung saan natin kukunin yung ating.
Yung long-term planning kasi mahalaga yun, di ba?
So, what we are lobbying for right now is actually to come up with a long-term research and development plan for the West Philippine Sea, the northeast of the Philippines. So, nagsimula na tayo dito. MSI helped craft the agenda, the West Philippine Sea research agenda. We are already lobbying with other agencies to support us. So, nandiyan na yung DNR, nag-usap na kami, nandiyan ang NFRDI. Before, what we want is for this agenda to be adopted by NEDA. Hindi na pwedeng taon-taon manghihingi tayo ng pera para tayo namamalimos.
Exactly,
Yes,
ang hirap magplano Yung budget mo pa lang hindi na klaro, no? Tapos para
may yung sustainability. It's really the sustainability. Kasi kung kailangan namin mag-hire ng tao, kung walang pera, wala kaming researchers. Say pa paano yung mga estudyante. And the other thing is that we need to look really beyond food, beyond fisheries. And I think that's where China is very much ahead of us right
Strategic
now.
assets, no? Rare earths. Mga ganun.
Yes. I refer to this as the fourth phase of Chinese aggression. Kasi they're now really setting laboratories and research centers in the South China Sea.
Yun nga yung sinasabi ko for us is science, for them is national interest.
Yes,
I mean, no offense to our scientist friends there. I mean, they're fantastic. It's just that they're under the thumb of their government in ways that it's not the same.
Pero hindi pa dapat ganun din yung pagtingin natin that investment in science is actually for national interest. That knowledge in itself is actually part of security issues. That knowledge of the environment and the resources we have is actually part of the planning for the future. We cannot utilize whatever is out there if we do not know where they are, who they are, what they're doing, and how we can actually utilize them. And marine scientific research really comes into play for that. Biruin nyo, meron 3 research station ngayon ng China sa West Philippine Sea. 3. And those 3 research stations were designed to exploit and explore different aspects of the marine environment, marine energy, geological resources, marine biodiversity. Sabi ko nga, kami sa MSI, we're trying to find bacteria associated with corals that are actually capable of producing antibiotics, anti-pain, anti-malaria, antiviral drugs. Who knows? Probably.
Baka may mga
stem cells. Who knows? It's probably
exactly. I'm just saying,
the drug for COVID-19 can actually be found in some of the specimens and organisms that we have in the West Philippines. Ang problem lang, hindi natin alam. And because China already has 3 research stations in the area and they're doing illegal marine scientific research, they're really hundreds of steps ahead of us.
Of course.
And that's nakakatakot yun, especially if we are looking into security of the Philippines.
Dr. Onda, what about because I deal a lot with our international partners, right? EU, Japan, Korea. They have been helping us with our Coast Guard capabilities, among others. They've been listening to our advice. So I'm very happy with some of the developments. Is there a potential for them also to help us on this front in terms of giving us? And you said, Japanese yung ginagamit niya. Because I was thinking maybe I can raise this also with our friends even more in our discussions.
For example,
we need more marine science research. Hindi lang
in many of
vessels.
the international fora naman, in many of the international discussions that we attended, ang lagi nating sinasabi, the marine scientific research of the science part of the West Philippine Sea or the South China Sea is actually a good venue. It's a good platform. It's a good conduit to actually invite different countries to come into the negotiation table and do research, because science itself should be quote unquote neutral, right? It should be non-controversial. We can talk about issues of plastics, we can talk about pollution, we can talk about climate change without prejudice to jurisdiction. Pero yun yung problem right now. For the longest time, yun yung paradigm natin sa marine scientific research, that it can actually be a neutral ground where people can talk. Ang problem natin ngayon, China is trying to change that.
They securitized it.
By putting up marine scientific laboratories, science laboratories sa South China Sea, and doing illegal research activities in the area. It really goes against the principle of having collaborative partnerships or joint explorations. Kasi hindi natin alam kung ano yung nakita nila ngayon eh. And they're not transparent about it. They are publishing some of their research, but not all. The data are not publicly available, and there are no Filipino counterparts that can check, that can verify, that can validate what they've been discovering. And I think talo tayo doon, sobrang talo talaga tayo doon.
Yung tatlong yun, they're inside dun sa West Philippine Sea, dun sa
in the illegally claimed the artificial islands basically.
Sa Fiery Cross ba yan yung iba? Fiery Cross?
Isa sa Subi Reef, sa Panganiban Reef, tsaka Rizal.
Katabi lang ng Pag-asa yan.
Yes. Katabi lang ng Pag-asa. We were in Pag-asa 2 weeks ago, we were there for a couple of
so now can we transition to that, because we kind of covered we're going around, di ba?
Yes.
Natin ang Pilipinas, di ba? So doon na tayo sa pinaka-mainit talaga, no? Tong West Philippine Sea. Ano ang how did you get into the West Philippine Sea issue as a marine scientist? We'll discuss later on bakit ka na mag-marine scientist to begin with. But we're first gonna start here. Ano yung transition mo into the West Philippine Sea issue, at ano yung assessment mo ng evolution of the ecological crisis, right? At the geopolitics around that ecological crisis, because they're all related. And of course, for us, even though we're not marine scientists, we have noticed how bad the situation is. This is the other crisis. But China is securitizing the situation. And ang basa ko dito is, one reason the Chinese are trying to justify those big fake islands is to say, oh, we're here to provide international public goods. I don't know, like we'll provide lighthouse and support and all. So clearly, we are interested in science, but they're not interested in science as science. They're interested in science as an instrument of national power. Right? So can you tell us a little bit more about that? And of course, yung issue ng galunggong, yung issue ng yung isda. Kasi ito talaga sikmura ang pinag-usapan dito gut issue to So if some of our Filipino brothers and sisters may not appreciate the nitty-gritties of international law or the plastics you found under the sea, but they will definitely going to care about yung issue ng gut issue. Can you tell us about the illegal fishing? How much money are we losing in West Philippine Sea every year? I saw one of your estimate was more than $100 million. Can we talk about that, please, Dr. Onda?
So I'll go first to your question. How did I transition to the West Philippine
of course.
Sea?
I'm just
I think it was, for me, it was very personal. I was born in Palawan. I was born on the southern part of Palawan. I'm a Palawenyo. So the West Philippine Sea is really my backyard since I was young. Lumaki ako na ang dami kong kilalang mga mangingisda na nangingisda sa West Philippine Sea. And from that experience, I actually saw how the seas changed and how the livelihoods of the Filipino fishermen were affected.
Right.
Nung bata ako, pag sinabi mong lapu-lapu, ang lapu-lapu sa amin, malalaki. Alam mo yun, a foot long or more than a foot long. Ngayon, yung mga lapu-lapu, when I was growing up, paano siya? Paliit siya ng paliit. Yung mga mismong mga mangingisda nagsasabi, nagbabago yung karagatan. Pero aside doon sa nagsasabi nagbabago sila ng karagatan, hindi na daw kasi sila nakakapunta doon sa mga traditional fishing grounds na pinupuntahan nila dati, specifically on the west of Palawan. So when I came back from my postdoc in Germany, so I did polar research, by the way, for my PhD and my postdoctoral research.
Right.
When I came back from Germany in 2018, mainit yung issue ng West Philippine Sea. I was the youngest faculty back then. Until now naman. And then, dahil nga siguro mainit yung issue, kabibili lang din namin ng barko, and ako lang din naman yung may medyo mahaba-habang experience in terms of ship time, ibig sabihin onboard experience to research. MSI asked me if I can actually lead the project called Protect.
When was this again? Which year is this?
Yeah, that was in 2019.
2019.
I arrived in 2018, and then I started leading the projects in 2019. But the thing is that, unlike the other scientists, siguro, our generation, we're very vocal, and we're very much...
Millennials po kami. Just
yes,
reminder ha, yung mga iba dyan, akala na matanda na tayo.
Yes, millennial. We're very opinionated, right? And yun yung dinadala ko bilang scientist eh.
Correct.
I recognize the fact that there is a big gap between the public and the scientists. Pag yung mga scientists na nagsasalita, natutulog. Yung at least the natural scientists, sa natural sciences, pag nagsasalita yung mga experts, natutulog yung publiko eh. I mean, that's one thing that we need to recognize. But I think what the millennial scientists are contributing to the table is that we're trying to laymanize. We're trying to become opinionated, and we're trying to make the scientific information very palatable to the public. So when I returned in 2019, ito yung isa sa mga contribution ko. I did not only lead an expedition, but I really tried my best to connect with the people and tell them what's happening in the west of the Philippines. Ngayon, ano ba yung mga nangyayari sa West Philippines? For the longest time, ito din yung problema. Nahirapan tayong i-assess how much West Philippines Sea actually changed because of the limitation of the resources that we have. Yung sinasabi ko sa inyo kanina. MSI has been doing research in the West Philippines Sea for the past 25 years. But that in that 25 years, we're only able to conduct or implement expeditions for 8 times in that 25 years.
8 times only?
8 times only for the 25 years. At yung mga expedition na yun, nangyayari.
Parang may bahay ka ng isang henerasyon, 8 times ka lang nagbisita sa hacienda mo.
Yes, ganun. Tapos ang makikita mo, very drastic na change. Ang problem doon, when you do baseline information, hindi mo ngayon ma-associate, bakit nga ba nagbago to? Ano ba yung dahilan ng pagbabago nito? But you know that it changed. And that's one of the problems. It's really difficult to assess or associate what problem was caused by
What do
this
you mean by
factor.
change? Like more daming toxics?
So
iba na yung mga fish, isda.
So when we talk about change, we have indicators. Sa science, meron kami sa baseline. And that's what we use to actually infer possible changes that are happening. So marami kami ginagamit. Una dyan yung coral reef cover. Ibig sabihin, if you go into an area na coral reef, ilan dyan yung covered pa ng corals. Kasi yung decline in the cover could indicate that the reef is being damaged. Ang next question does, ano yung nagda-damage doon? Is it natural? Or is it
climate change ba to?
Activities or climate change related siya? So that's one. So in terms of coral cover, significant yung decrease niya from the 1990s to the 2010 to 2015, 2018 data. From, for example, 80% cover, nag-decline siya to 20%. And that's a big
that's a big decline. Yes. Oh my God, that's really bad.
80% to 20%. Now,
can you tell to our friends bakit mahalagang coral reefs? Kasi ito yung bahay.
So yun nga. So
bakit
ano yung ano ngayon kung bumababa yung yung extent yung cover ng coral reefs?
Hindi ito hindi lang ito pine tree lang pwede may i-plant again. I mean So,
imagine you can actually compare the South China Sea as a desert, right? Nasa gitna siya ng isang malaking karagatan, and you would expect that dahil nasa gitna siya, it's actually a desert. But no, the West Philippine Sea, the Spratlys Islands are very, very productive. Ibig sabihin, madaming pagkain because of the corals. Because of the coral reefs. Ngayon yung coral reefs, they serve as the habitat home. Ngayon kung walang bahay ang isda, hindi mabubuhay, hindi dadami. So basically, they are the keystone species. Sila yung pag nandyan, may ecosystem, may buhay, may pagkain. Pag walang corals, wala ding buhay, walang pagkain, wala tayong fisheries. So yung decline ng coral extent or coral cover would also result into the decline in the possible fisheries. Ito na yung mga nakatira dun sa reef. So sino yung mga nakatira sa reef? Mga isda, mga iba't ibang klase ng hayop at halaman. Gusto ko lang din emphasize, halimbawa yung seaweed. I don't know if you're nori. You know nori, right? Mahilig tayo dyan. Seaweeds are very economically valuable species because we can use them for pharmaceuticals, for food, for drugs. When our scientists
yung mga energy drink, may meron akong Swiss na mahal na akong kinain na parang 5,000 pesos yata. Sample na seaweed daw galing. Sabi baka sa Pangasinan lang kinuha to.
Gamit ang tawag na.
Bigla.
Yes, ganon. Actually, tayo nag-export sa kanila ng seaweed.
Exactly, then they process it.
There's a lot of seaweeds that you find in the area. Before, our scientists, before going there in 2019, sabi nila, ito lang yung number of species na meron tayo dyan. But after diving just for 5 days, our scientists were able to discover that 33 new records of seaweeds in the area. And most of the seaweeds are economically valuable. Isa doon sa mga species na yun can actually be used as anti-HIV, as an HIV drug. So parang hindi, ang tagal na nandun pat hindi natin alam. And that's again the thing. We didn't go there. We did not have the resources to actually fully explore
Or
the
we
area.
didn't allocate resources, right? I mean, imagine how much money we spend on so much nonsense. Yung paggawa ng same asphalt every election, right? I mean, I don't buy this argument na porkit mahirap. I mean, we're not even.
No, I don't think that we actually don't have
right?
resources. It's really misallocation.
Misallocation. Let's be very clear.
Misallocation. Or we don't know what to prioritize, right?
Yeah.
So kaya importante yung lobbying. So through time, bumababa yung corals mo, bumababa din yung fishery mo. So our data show, for example, that in the 90s, yung sobrang dami, sobrang diverse na mga isda at saka yung sobrang laki ng mga isda, lahat yun bumagsak. And that's very important because that also tells us yung pagkonti ng mga isda is associated with the damages in the reef ecosystems, yung overfishing, illegal fishing, yung pagliit ng mga isdang nahuhuli, that's because of overfishing. Ibig sabihin, hindi na lumalaki yung mga isda. Nakukuha na sila habang maliliit pa. And that's very important kasi hindi na nila nare-reach yung kanilang reproductive maturity. Hindi pa sila nangingitlog, kinuha na sila. So saan manggagaling ngayon yung mga bagong henerasyon ng mga itlog ng isda na nadadami at kukunin na at magsusupply ng fisheries?
Who is behind this? Okay, let's make this controversial because I see a lot of our pro-China friends saying, hey, yung mga Vietnamese, yung mga Indonesian, whatever, sila pasaway, bakit nyo biniblame ang China? But I think the Chinese are a completely different league, right? Parang NBA versus barangay level tong laban kasi ang laki ng trolleys sila, di ba? I mean, they just come in and like just sweep it all and then wala, konti na lang natira. And then pag pupunta naman yung ating mangingista, meron na silang Coast Guard, mas malaki pa sa ating naval warship yung Coast Guard nila, di ba? Because we need to talk about this, right? Because I know this is sensitive. You're a natural scientist. Maybe this is not your area.
No, but
the reality is that this is affecting.
That's actually a very important question. Kaya nga sabi ko sa'yo kanina, baseline information is very important because only by having very comprehensive baseline data, you will be able to really associate ano yung mga possible factors. One is that let's also recognize that the fact that the natural environment is changing on its own. So yung damages can actually be associated with the natural environment. And then
climate change, for instance. Yung heating
climate change. Yes.
Nagwo-whiten yung mga...
Just even storms. The storms can actually damage reefs. Nagkukos siya ng breakage ng corals, nagkukos siya ng damages. The third is direct human activities. Now, that's a very interesting question. Sino kaya sa mga grupo ng mga mangingisda nagkukos talaga?
Yung IUU, di ba? Yung illegal, unregulated, underreported fishing.
I would say, and I agree with Dr. Batobakal on this, for the past years, Filipino fishermen have been very much afraid of going out into the open, especially in the West Philippines. At marami doon sa mga data natin, yung VIRS data, yung nighttime data natin, with the AIS they have, tell us that there are actually foreign vessels, mostly from Vietnam and also from China. Ngayon, if you're asking me how much is actually being fished out by Vietnamese or by the Chinese, yun yung hindi natin alam. Kasi IUU itself is very difficult to quantify it.
Because it's underreported, of course.
Kasi it's unreported.
Kasi it's illegal, right?
Right.
But we can have an estimate, right? Pwede tayo mag-estimate ng drug trafficking, di ba? It's not accurate, but it's a range, right? Do we have a range for this? Because I saw
siguro, ganito na lang gagawin kong basis, no? Yeah, ganito na lang gagawin kong basis. In the early 2000s, in the 90s,
ayan na, nagka-caveat ka na.
Yes, right. Before itself reported that the West Philippine Sea contributes around 20 to 25% of the national fisheries captured fisheries production of the country. Ibig sabihin 25% yung nakukuha natin doon. But in 2018, BIFAR also reported that what we are only getting from the West Philippine Sea is only 2%. So that drop of 20 to 23%, malaki yun.
Wow, 90% almost yung drop.
This data was from BIPAR. It was actually Yusek Gongona who said it.
my
Parang,
God.
kaya nga ito yung argument nila dati na wag na tayo masyadong mag-ano dyan sa West Philippines. Total 2% lang naman ng kaisdaan na nakukuha natin dyan.
But
so,
what's the reason nag-drop ng ganyan kalaki na 90%?
So yun nga. So if we sa mga scientists natin, they kind of agree or at least argue that if we will just let the natural environment do its course na magkaroon siya ng damages because of natural processes, hindi aabot yun ng 20%. So that we can already factor that out. The second is andyan yung illegal fishing activities at yung IUUs. So probably 15 to 20% can be associated with IUUs. And when we talk about IUUs, it's not just overfishing, it's not just illegal fishing activities. Andyan yung paggamit natin ng cyanide, that actually cause damage to the corals. So yung pag-cause ng damage to corals ay nagre-result dun sa pagbaba or decline ng fisheries natin. And of course, what's the largest of that? The artificial islands. These are very big, productive coral reef ecosystems. Ang laki-laki. Tingnan nyo sa mapa.
Yung nilagay na reclaim ng mga Chinese na fake islands, yung fire across the reef.
Yes.
How damaging they were, because it's there in the arbitration case. They were actually censored.
You're basically killing everything. Diba? It's stages eh. Ang nilang gagawin, they're gonna catch whatever they can. And then second, i-harvest nila yung nasa substrate. Kaya kasama dyan yung mga fossilized giant clams. And after nilang i-harvest, papatagin nila yung yung reef bago sila magtambak ng ng buhangin. So you're basically killing the entire ecosystem. Now,
let me get this right, Dio, no? So the Chinese just killed the whole environment and then put environmental scientists in the area to do environmental research.
Alam mo yung nakakatawa.
That's a very interesting way of doing things.
And this is the personal opinion of mine, and I might be put in a hot tub for this.
You're all speaking in private capacity.
Yes.
Even Mark is not speaking for someone.
but this is the funny thing. China in 2018 invited Filipino marine scientists to do collaboration to restore the coral reefs in the South China Sea.
Paano ba i-restore? How can you restore? I mean, di ba millions
controversial nga din yan yung restoration. Kasi
can you even restore it?
Transplantation. Ibig sabihin, from another area, you're gonna transplant the corals or you will do self-seeding.
Sure,
ibig sabihin, kukuha ka ng larvae, right? Hindi, ito nga yung argument ng scientists natin sa Dumaguete. That's why we're not allowing reclamation in Dumaguete. Kasi sa Dumaguete, ang gusto nila after reclamation, they're gonna restore it. Eh, sabi namin, hindi, we cannot do that. It's not restoration.
May pagka-dolomite itong kwento na ito. Mark, baka meron tayong pro-dolomite dito sa meeting na ito. Mark,
yung sa Dumaguete, pag-usapan din natin later. Interesting din yung nangyayari dun.
Sige.
After sa West Philippines.
Kasi yung mga dolomite, gusto ko yung mga dolomite thinking eh. Yung beach, dalhin lang natin dito sa Manila, itambak lang natin. Chinese pa lang mindset niyan. Chinese style.
Pero yun, the thing there is that you're not only killing the ecosystem. You're not just killing the ecosystem kung saan mo nilagay yung artificial island. So West Philippine Sea and the South China Sea in general, we need to look at it as an entire ecosystem. It's not separated. They are actually interconnected. When I say
Avatar.
Yes, parang Avatar.
Right? Sira yung Mother Earth.
Yeah, true. Kasi ano nangyayari? Yung mga corals na nasa sa West Philippine Sea or nasa Spratlys Island, when they release the eggs, those eggs don't stay in the Spratlys. They actually drift with the current. And where do they go? They go to the coastal areas of Thailand, Vietnam, Indonesia, Malaysia, and most of those actually go to the west of Palawan and the coast of Luzon. So meron kang source. Hindi lahat na nakukuha mo sa west ng Luzon ay galing sa Luzon. Most of them could actually be coming from the reefs that are found in the middle of the South China Sea. Ngayon isipin mo na lang, if the degradation of the reefs in the middle of the South China Sea continue,
wala nang darating.
Ano nang mangyayari? Saan manggagaling yung itlog mo? Saan manggagaling larvae?
Sa Dolomite Beach, sa Manila po. Gagawa po kami ng si DNR daw, gagawa sila na dyan. Siargao, Manila Bay.
So yun yung ina-argue namin na ecological connectivity. That the damages that we have in the South China Sea are not just on fisheries. These are also affecting the other undervalued ecosystem services and the long-term effects, implications on the connectivity of the ecosystems within the South China Sea. At ito yung mahirap i-quantify. Kaya nga sa amin,
Pero Leo, may nakita akong data parang $180 million per year ang estimate
no,
na.
that's the 33.1 billion per year. So yung funny story dito is that Jay and I were in the same press con, and I was discussing and explaining kung ano yung possible na ecosystem services. Ibig sabihin, magkano yung binibigay sa ating serbisyo na isang hektarya ng coral reef per year.
Right.
So there was this global studies saying
yield,
that
yield.
On average, yung 1 hectare of reef could actually give us $350,000 equivalent of services. Ibig sabihin,
pera ang usapan dito.
$350,000.
Pero Mark, parang ginto ni Yamashita.
Actually, $353,000 per hectare per year. Ibig sabihin nun, kasama, it's not just on food. Ibig sabihin kasama na dito yung service niya sa climate change, yung pag-absorb niya ng carbon dioxide.
Yep.
Kasama na dito yung kanyang service para i-filter, linisin yung tubig. Kasama na dito yung service niya na mag-provide ng habitat sa mga hayop. So all of those, on average, nasa $350,000. Is it actually the real or the actual service, the value of the services?
Conservative estimate lang yan.
No.
It's just a conservative.
Let's start with the fact that the ecological services are invaluable. Hindi mo mapapalitan ng halaman na nagbibigay sa'yo ng oxygen because you cannot produce oxygen on your own. So, pero yung pagbibigay natin ng value dun sa ecosystem services, they're very helpful, especially on the policy side. Kasi kita nyo naman. After that, so Jay, in that particular press conference, Jay, si Dr. Batong Bakal, kami binigay namin na UP IMLO. Sabi namin, ito yung possible na...
Wait lang, kasi si Jay Batong Bakal po ay kasi ka-faculty ni Harry Roque before. Ex-Harry Roque, ex-human rights lawyer. Okay, anyways,
segue lang, kasama ko si Sir Jay sa Pag-asa Island. We were there for
nakita ko yung mga pictures.
Best friend ba kayo ni Harry Roque?
But si Mark, beshi ni Harry. Ako, beshi ni Jay. So,
Jay, okay.
Fair game.
So yun yung ecological services, nakakatulong siya. Yes, nakakatulong siya if we want to understand and appreciate. Ngayon, ano yung nangyari doon? Kami binigay namin yung possible na baseline value of the ecological services. Then IMLOS provided ito yung possible area damaged by China based on remote sense data. Right? So they just multiplied it. 33.1. Ano yung nakakatawa dito? The following day, 33.1 billion per year.
Per year.
Because it's the area multiplied by the possible value of the ecological services. But I'd also like to point out, yung study na yun, which we reported, was actually a global average. The Philippines is the center of marine biodiversity. Yeah. We are the epicenter. We are the Amazon of the seas. That also means that we have more species, more economic ecological services. Therefore, probable higher economic value. So, yung estimate talaga for the Philippines could be higher. Yeah. Ngayon, in response to that, nakakatawa kasi when PDI released that the following day, so 33.1 billion damage sa China, I received calls from all related government agencies or relevant government agencies who are working on the West Philippine Sea. And they were asking me, how did you come up with the value? Sabi namin, no, it's just really an estimate. Kasi nga, wala tayong baseline data, wala rin tayong masyadong pag-aaral. Kailangan natin ng
fake news. Hindi ito
fake news. That's not fake news. That's
hindi
just,
ito Yamashita treasure.
No. It's just really one way of estimating. Again, this is not the absolute value. This is just an estimate. Pero alam mo, conservative estimate, doon din natin nakita yung value of, nakita natin yung significance of putting a value on things. Because the government became more aggressive, more proactive, I'd say. Yung gagamit kong term. More proactive.
Sorry to cut you, because we need to put some estimates, because unfortunately, that's how you get attention of people, right?
Yes.
I want to say this because we have a president who says, ang China nag-invest naman dito ng imaginary billions of dollars. Ang sagot ko, tatay, billions of dollars per year ang nawawala sa atin pag hindi natin ayusin situation sa West Philippine Sea. So parang yung Chinese, sabi na mag-invest kami ng billion over the next 10 years. Every year, bilyones ang nawawala sa atin. Mukhang pera ka, talo ka pa rin. Never mind yung patriotism and all. Diba? Kasi I want to emphasize that because ordinary people, not ordinary, but I mean, common folks may better appreciate the gravity of the situation if you put some money, some dollar signs.
Because let's accept it. Whether we accept it or not, the issue of the West Philippines is very abstract to most Filipinos. Ang layo-layo niya, hindi
Unless
nga nila alam
mga
kung anong
mangingisdang
itsura.
involved.
Unless mangingisdang involved. But
Exactly.
the other thing is that when PDI released the 33.1 billion, it's not just the government agencies who became more concerned. It's also the general public. Ganun pala kalaki. Ganun pala kamahal. It became more tangible for them. So, ano yung naging positive doon? Although it is a conservative estimate. Ano yung naging proactive actions from the government side? Yung BIFAR actually went to us and talked to us. How can we actually come up with a better valuation of the damages? So, ibig sabihin nun, they are now looking into investing in the science, investing into more research, and actually acknowledging the fact that there are damages that are happening in the West Philippines.
Can we sue China? Can that potentially be used to sue China or Vietnam?
I leave that question probably. I on the personal opinion, I think yes. And
I'm not saying that you're advocating for it. I'm just saying, technically speaking, right? This could be used.
Yes.
Justice Carpio has been making this argument. Let's sue them again, even more.
Yes. For me, as an ecologist myself, I think it's a crime against humanity. It's a common marine heritage, and there are millions and millions of not just Filipinos, but actually Southeast Asians depend on the bounties of the South China Sea. You destroy the South China Sea, you destroy the livelihood, the sources of food of the Southeast Asians. So it is not just the Filipinos who should be concerned about it. And yes, it is a crime. And therefore, we should sue China for it. For the interest of humanity and the interest of Earth and Mother Nature, we should sue China.
That's what I'm looking for.
May tanong din ako. How busy pa rin sila ngayon in constructing new islands, new everything doon? Gaano ka aggressive
reclamation?
I think I was having a discussion with Sir Jay dito. I think in terms of new, wala pa, but they're trying to improve. They're continuing to improve and install new facilities dun sa mga claimed areas na nila.
Mini-militarize na, bro.
How many reclaimed islands do they have right now?
Ilan nga ba? 3? 4? 3?
Around 3 or 4.
3 sa malaki sa Spratlys, pero meron rin sila sa Woody Island, doon sa north so marami actually, marami yan. Yes. 3 malaki lang yung Sugimi Ship at Fiery Cross.
Yes, at least in the Spratlys Island, 3 malalaki yun.
3 malalaki.
As in malaki as in ang layo doon
so
sa
they're developing yung mga islands na. They're not in the process of making new ones.
No, I think no. Kasi
as far as we know.
Ang laki na
yung problematic na COC South China. But I think that's another conversation. Pero they're continuing to improve it. Kaya nga, ang lagi ko nire-refer yung sa scientific progress nila as the 4th phase of Chinese aggression. Because yun talaga yung investments nila ngayon. Kung makikita nyo, they've deployed a lot of research vessels in the area. They're doing a lot of surveys, although they're very much illegal. And the Philippines actually acknowledge that they are illegal. They are sending a lot of scientists in the area. They are developing a lot of technologies in China to deploy and implement in the islands. Isa doon sa mga interesting, this is the funny thing. We also work with our counterpart scientists in China. At sila mismo yung nag-share ng news, no? Na for them, it's okay. Na parang, actually, walang problema doon. We're just gonna share the news. So ito yung mga nakakatakot na developments. Bakit ko siya sinabi nakakatakot? Kasi the Filipinos are being put into disadvantage. Unang-una, they've developed this technology called sand to soil. So they can now turn sand into a productive agricultural soil. And what does it mean for them? They can now have people staying in the islands for long periods of time and even really live there, inhabit the islands and treat it as their own for eternity probably. The second is what we call the open ocean mariculture. So kung pupunta kayo ng Pangasinan, marami kayong makikita ng cages ng bangus na nakalutang sa may tagupan. Now, they're developing a technology that would allow them to rear fish in the middle of the ocean. They've already developed the prototype and deployed some of this in Norway, and I don't see any reason why they will be limiting themselves in deploying the same technology in the South China Sea. The third thing is seaweeds. Again, seaweeds. Philippines is exporting a lot. I think 80% ng sources nila come from the Southeast Asia ng seaweeds. We're exporting a lot to China. Parang ginagawa ng China because they have this new environment where they can farm their own seaweeds. They're developing technologies for seaweed agriculture in their own backyard. Kasama na dyan yung pagpapadami ng sea urchin that are also coming a lot from the Philippines. Yung sea cucumber na 'di ba mabenta yan sa kanila, and it's a valuable product. At they've started actually implementing those technologies in the islands that they've claimed in the South China Sea. Ano ibig sabihin nito? They're going or gearing towards food sufficiency. dun sa areas. And having that will allow them to solidify their claims and their presence
Sa
in the
kanila.
area. Tayo nga sa Pag-asa, hirap na hirap magpadala ng mga ng mga pagkain. Alam na nasa Pag-asa kami for 3 weeks, yung mga tao nakadepende talaga sa dagat. Kapag masama ang panahon, walang
Hindi
pagkain.
kaya pwede mag-panda order sa katabing Chinese souvenir.
Kaya nga eh. Alam mo, pag nandun ka,
dyan.
pag nandun ka, ang signal doon ay Viettel o kaya China.
Ayan.
So roaming,
Wala pa yung smart.
merong
diba?
smart.
Magagawa tayo ng
Meron na smart, pero mas malakas apparently nasa kabila.
Ayan talaga.
So,
Yan
calling on smart, invest po tayo.
Go lang.
Doon.
Ay, dito. Baka magkaroon ng dito dyan.
Ayun na. Pero yun, di ba? Pero it already tells us that they're really gearing towards solidifying their presence in the area. And all of this emanate from the fact that they have developed technologies adaptable to the area. And that also
planning.
is
long-term
planning. And investment. Pag kung makikita nyo yung science and research development agenda ng China, they really have this one section just for the South China Sea.
Right. And they have
So
all these new PhD programs on UNCLOS and international law all across the area. I mean, I'm very aware of that. Just a question, Dio. Kamusta yung do you have any idea about yung mga fisheries community natin dyan sa Pangasinan or yung follow-up dun sa Reed Bank, yung mga Gemver, mga ganun. Meron din kayong mga follow-up dyan? Do you have any ideas about yung mga communities natin dyan?
Yeah, so ang task to actually do research on that is the NFRDI, the National Fisheries Research and Development Institute, which was before it was part of BIFAR. So sila yung kasama namin doon sa West Philippine Sea. At ito yung sentiments ng mga mangingisda nila, ng mga nakausap nila. So they were able to gather data by doing interviews.
Right.
At persistent pa din yung problem. Persistent yung problem na hindi, halimbawa, within Pag-asa, meron kang case 1, 2, 3, 4, right? Yung 1, 2, 3, 4 na yun, those are actually productive reefs. Dati, pangisdaan yun yung mga mangingisda galing Pag-asa. But when things started to become, more controversial, hindi na sila nakakapunta doon. So the mere limitation of going or accessing the area already affects their livelihood. It's the same problem that we have. Yes, it's the same problem that we have in mainland Palawan. Pag pumunta ka ng West Palawan, kukonti sa mga Palawenyo ang gustong mangisda doon sa West ng Philippines because they're very afraid. At yung isda, at I think doon pa din tayo nakukulangan yung investment o yung tulong doon sa mga isda natin in terms of their assets, in terms doon sa mga bangka nila. Sabi mo nga, kapag nasa Pag-asa ka actually or nasa South China Sea ka, malilito ka kung nakikita mo yung isang isla o isang barko. Ganun ka, mga super signers, ganun kaliwanag yung barko ng mga China. And these are actually steel-hulled ships. Tapos makikita mo yung barko, yung bangka ng mga mangingisda. Kung alam niyo yung ginagamit na bangka papunta halimbawa ng El Nido, yung mga o yung nagtumatawid ng Batangas papunta ng Puerto Galera, ganun lang kalaki yung bangka ng mga mangingisda natin. So how would they actually compete with this big commercial fisheries na mga barko ng China? So I think I think nandun pa din tayo sa sitwasyon na
I have another question.
How about the security nila? How do we secure our fishermen? Na hindi sila na-abuso, hindi sila na-threaten?
Yeah.
So
should we patrol with them? Dapat yung Coast Guard pa kasama nila or Navy? Ganun ba?
We really need more presence in the area. That's one thing. Actually, kung makikita mo yung interview with a fisherman from Pag-asa, it was aired in BBC a week ago or so. Yung mga mangingisda mismo nagsabi na kailangan namin ng security, kailangan namin na pag sinabi nyo babantayan nyo kami, bantayan nyo kami. Alam mo, ito yung nakakalungkot, no? Pag nasa Pag-asa ka, yung mismong mga tropa natin doon, and I feel for them, I am with them.
You mean the Marines?
Yung mga tropa natin doon, not just the Marines, the joint unit, meron doon Navy, Marines, Philippine Coast Guard. Wala tayong mabilis na speedboat that can actually go into the middle of Pag-asa, into the lagoon and rescue our fishermen. Wala tayong aso. Paano ipapatupad ng mga tao natin on the ground if the facilities they have are actually, not operational, not working?
Kamusta yung efforts ni Secretary Lorenzana to improve yung facilities dyan sa Pag-asa? Has there been some improvement in the salinization program?
Yeah, the Pag-asa itself is not the Pag-asa that you would read in the books 10 years ago. Talaga, in fairness, ang dami naman talagang improvements.
Diba?
Yes, ang dami improvements. I think meron ng 24 hours ngayon na kuryente sa Pag-asa Island.
Buti pa Pag-asa,
which is 24 hours. Which is actually good. Andyan na din yung pagpapaganda nung runway, no? I think it's not a secret naman.
Yung airstrip, yeah.
I think si Secretary Lorenzana siya din naman nagsabi that they're actually improving
Exactly,
it.
yeah.
Pero doon din pumapasok yung argument namin, no? If we are to inhabit the island and if we are to send more people there, we also need to make the living system very sustainable. So kailangan din natin, we really need more sustainable approaches on how to make Pag-asa a sustainable island. So doon din papasok yung science again. Halimbawa yung basura, issue ng basura. I want to tackle on this kasi it's really one of the, I think, it's one of the platforms na pwede nating hilain yung iba't ibang bansa including China para pag-usapan yung problema sa South China Sea. Kasi if you go to Pag-asa, if you go around and do survey, that's what I do as a scientist. We survey yung plastics. Right. 60% of the plastics based on their brands and origin did not come from Pag-asa. It actually came from different countries. So it just tells us that because of the current, because of how the ocean moves, yung basura ng iba't ibang bansa, they meet together and then they settle in one place. This is one demonstration of how we can work with other countries, because this really demonstrate the connectivity of the onshore ecosystem and activities, the offshore environments in the west of the Philippines and the South China Sea in general. So if we can convince them na isa tong malaking problema, then probably we can start talking about possible.
Are they amenable? I mean, aside from
together,
China, is Vietnam, Malaysia, are they amenable? Other countries?
Yeah, so I was in a meeting with South China's the Southeast Asian Subcommittee on Science and Technology with China. So it's a conference, it's a biannual conference with the Southeast Asian countries in China talking about science and technology. All countries actually agreed to work on this. Ang problem na lang where to start, saan, who will lead, di ba? So yun na lang yung mga kailangan pag-usapan, but at least everyone expressed intention and interest to actually work towards this, working out this problem and provide solution to this issue.
May tanong din ako.
Yes.
Sorry. Yung sa economic zone ng Philippines, are there islands na gawa ng Vietnam or Malaysia or China lang yung encroaching on our territory? Meron din bang mga man-made islands or structures yung like Malaysia, Vietnam, doon sa easy natin, doon sa zone natin?
Or sa sprat list, may comparable ba na giant islands yung ibang countries, or it's really China which is next level?
As far as I know, wala doon sa Spratlys Island. Probably Richard could correct me on this. Pero madaming improvements. For example, Taiwan itself has the Taiping Island. I was able to visit Ito Aba. I was able to visit Ito Aba 3 years ago.
May water daw sila Kunyari may fake water din mga Taiwanese.
Pero this is outside our economic zone.
It's within.
Hindi na lang yung medyo malayo-layo.
Ito Aba is not part of the claimed features that we have. Right. So, yun. Pero there's a lot of improvements. There's a lot of improvements being done on those islands. Pero on the scale of what China did, comparable to it, I think there's none.
Just to clarify, Mark, so sa international law, walang problema pag in-improve mo on top of pre-existing. Kunyari, meron kang nahanap na isla, gawa ka ng palasyo dyan, wala problema.
Okay lang yun.
Ang problema is yung maliit na isla, ginawa mong higanteng isla. Yan, malaking problema
yun.
Ang
problema.
Yun yung ginagawa ng China.
Yun ang nakakasira.
Yun yung nakakasira.
Yes.
Because what Philippines did is, yung Pag-asa, laking rock na yan. So we just built on that. Hindi natin pina-reclaim yan na parang Manila-based style na dolomite kanon. Wala. Pero yung China, talagang, wala atolls lang yun It was nothing. Yeah. They just
nothing.
It was submerged.
Dredged and dumped. So wasak yung area. Pero yung Malaysia naman kahit maliliit yung mga hawak nila, ang ganda nung yung layang-layang na Malaysia, meron silang resort, parang may golf course pa, may nakaposition na Air Force, Navy. Yung Vietnam, meron din solar panels. So medyo
ang Philippines ba meron ding disputed with Vietnam and Malaysia? I'm not really familiar with.
Actually, yung hawak natin, kine-claim din ng Malaysia. In fact, ayon sa Malaysians, tayo din kumuha ng kanila. Yes. And let's just go back to Marcos, in fairness kay Marcos, if there's one thing I kind of am okay with him, is nung 70s, tayong nauuna dyan, tayong bully. I'm not saying it's good to be bully, but the reality is that we were proactive. We built the first airstrip in Spratlys 1977 pa lang. Tapos sumunod ang mga Vietnam, Malaysia, then China, next level. So we were a pioneer, and then for some reason, wasak yung economy natin, nag-EDSA, naggulo, pinabayaan yan. In fact, I asked President Ramos on this issue, like, why didn't we build structure and all? Wala daw pera or something like that. But we know there's some crazy stories. Like one story I heard is dun sa Scarborough Shoal, Panatag Shoal. Actually, may plan na gagawa tayo ng lighthouse. Kasi Mark, kung meron kang istruktura dyan, mas mahirap na magkupal yung ibang country at kukunin sa'yo. Kung wala kang wala, at sabi mo akin yan, tapos sila mag-build, ay, parang yun, di ba? Unahan to, di ba?
Unahan.
So, one story is that there was someone in DFA back in the days, right, na who was trying to position for UN, a la Harry Roque or something like that. So in order para hindi masira yung career niya, ayaw na galawin yung mga nangyari dyan. So at the expense of our own country, he chose his career. So we also have these sad stories whereby kahit may pera, may initiative, some people slept on their job or they skip their job so that they get a better job in the UN or something like that. So we have many horror stories like that we can discuss. But I'm really glad that we brought Doc Onda because he brings also the marine scientist point of view. But Dio, di ba meron din Chinese fishing ban? Annual seasonal fishing ban?
Yeah.
Ano yan? Anong petsa niya? Ano ang bag
Totoo
yan?
naman yun. Actually, during the southwest monsoon, mga June hanggang August, September, yun yung sinasabi nilang fishing ban. Pero nakakatawa dito, I was in China 3 years ago, again for the same meeting. And then we talked about the issues in the the South China Sea area, right, together with China and the Southeast Asian countries. And everyone agreed, no? Even China, even scientists from China are agreeing that there's already overfishing. There's already there's a possibility for the fisheries collapse in the South China Sea. So isa sa mga solution nito is the closed season for fishing. Ibig sabihin, pagbabawalan natin yung mga mangingisda na manghuli to allow the natural population to bounce back, to replicate at to reproduce para dumami sila. Tapos sabi ng China in that particular conversation, sabi niya, yeah, we agree, we need to have a closed season for fishing. At ang sabi ng China, and we're already doing that. Why are you not following us? Alam niyo yung problema. Because even I agree with my colleagues from the other Southeast Asian countries. If we are going to follow China, is it actually tantamount to also recognizing their authority over these waters?
It's like,
so that's
kukunin niya yung kalata ng bahay mo, tapos sabi na, hey, alagaan natin itong kalata ng bahay mo kasi sa amin na yan, di ba? What's mine is mine, what's yours we share and we take care of together.
So that's where the that's where the complication of the politics come in sciences. Kasi we all agree with the method. Yes, we all agreed with the method, but the thing is that what's the platform to actually
what's the strategic end
method? Yes. Ang problem, wala tayong regional fisheries organization in the South China Sea. Meron tayong CFDEC, but that's only for the Southeast Asian waters, right? And what they can do is just really recommend, not really implement. So ito yung isa sa mga pinupush natin as part of the possible collaboration with the Southeast Asian countries. Unang-una na dyan yung pag-establish natin ng marine protected area. Ano ba yung concept ng marine protected area? You dedicate one reef, one area of your territory as a no-take zone. Ibig sabihin, you just allow the organisms to live happy, don't disturb them. Ang idea
doon, conservation, parang sa mga jungles, yung mga forests.
Yes, para sa mga sanctuaries, diba?
Sanctuaries,
So, So, doon papasok yung connectivity. Kasi, if we acknowledge again that one reef is not independent from one another, they're interdependent of each other, then having a multiple marine protected areas in the South China Sea will allow us to have a network. Ibig sabihin, kapag ang isang itlog napadpad sa isang reef, that egg can actually flourish in that reef. So yun yung pinupush natin. One is for the marine protected area. The second is, or network of marine protected area. The second is actually joint patrons in the West Philippine Sea or in the South China Sea.
But they, wasn't that the
proposal?
Sorry, again, I'm cutting you. I remember in November 2016, sabi daw ng China, they're open to joint patrols with us sa Scarborough Shoal. I also heard over and over they said that they're open to marine sanctuary. Yung sinasabi mo na, eto, no fish zone. Hayaan natin to bumalik sa buhay, then later on we can do something about it. But none of it happened, right? I mean, this is a problem. These are supposed to be non-controversial, non-sovereignty issue. But even on that, we cannot get our Chinese friends to help us. What's going on?
Yeah, I really don't know on the part of China on the marine protected area. Although they are always saying, and they're always quote unquote committing that they wanted to partner, wanted to collaborate for the restoration and also for the protection of some of the areas in the South China Sea. But it never happened. I always asked my professors, kasi matagal na tong concept eh.
Exactly.
I think some of the oldest concept papers that I've read, they were way back
1970s,
1980s, 70s,
yeah.
probably hindi pa tayo pinapanganak. Pero walang nag-flourish, wala talagang lumipad na proposal. And they're always telling me it's because of the geopolitics in the area. Pero there are certain, I think, windows of opportunities. One is that with Vietnam, for example, we have conducted this joint ocean marine scientific research expeditions from 1996 to 2007. We had 4 different joint ocean expeditions. Ano nangyari dito? Our scientists boarding the same vessels, doing the same activities, trying to understand the air with Vietnam. It was a brainchild of one of the technical working groups dun sa conflict there was an effort for resolving conflicts in the South China Sea in the earlier years in the 90s. So ito yung isa sa mga naging brainchild nung workshops na yun, is to use marine scientific research as a possible conduit to actually build confidence among countries. And then talk about ito yung maganda kasi after nung phase 1, yung phase 1 happened from 1996 to 2007. Vietnam and the Philippines agreed that they wanted to expand the JOMSTRE, they call it the Joint Ocean Marine Scientific Research Expedition, and include the other Southeast Asian countries and China. And there were actually already preparatory meetings. And I thought that was a hopeful period. Kasi when we understand the area, therefore we're opening the area to international scientists. So we're building more confidence. We're actually working on disputed waters. So maganda sana yung concept na yun. Pero after like 4 preparatory meetings, na-stop, hindi nag-flourish yung partnership. Tapos namatay na yung usapan dun sa phase 2 ng JOMSTRE.
And your sense is China is partly to blame. Again, I don't want to be a hater
I was trying, sorry.
We're not haters here. I'm just being
I don't know. I was trying to find documents or records of discussions why it did not flourish or why it stopped. The negotiation stops for the phase 2 with China being included in it. Nabuhay na lang uli yung usapan sa JOMSTRE in 2019. So the National Security Council through General Esperon called for a meeting sa MSI and DNR, and NSA wanted to again revive the discussions for another joint scientific research expedition with Vietnam. But this time, China was not
with Vietnam.
Yeah, in Vietnam. China was
why
not part of the
can't we do it
discussions
just
anymore.
with ASEAN countries muna? At least yung parts na medyo labas sa, I don't know, laki kasi ng 9-dash line. Yun ang malaking problema
Ang problema sa mo gagawin. Municipal waters.
Mag-ayos kayo tayo ng garden na yung elephant sa gitna. Yun ang problema natin, di ba? I mean, we're not haters here. I'm just being brutally honest. China is just so big and so voracious that.
Pero in terms naman of just doing scientific collaboration, we've been doing that for the longest time. We've been inviting Vietnamese, Southeast Asian scientists coming to the Philippines, doing expedition in the Philippine waters, pero not in the disputed areas. Pero yun nga, I think that's the point of the joint expedition, right? Now you go to the disputed area and at the same time you do it.
Endangered the IUU and all of that.
I have a question.
Mark, you were saying.
Aside from fisheries, how about yung sa oil resources? Is there oil doon sa
Is there Yamashita treasure? Is there?
Remember there was a joint
gold
expedition between the Philippines and China for a joint exploration in the South China Sea. I think it was in the term of President Macapagal Arroyo. And then after the expedition,
JMSU, Joint Marine Seismic Undertaking, with Vietnam, trilateral. Vietnam,
with
China,
Vietnam.
Philippines, 2004 or 5,
wala rin tayong nahitado. Hindi rin natin alam kung nasan yung data on that right now. And
may secret, kasi may secret clause yan Meron siyang clause na secretive You cannot.
So yun, I think there our geologists are saying that there is a big possibility that there are deposits in Reed Bank, for example, or other parts of the South China Sea. And I think our country itself has done a lot of explorations in the area. I'm just not really privy to this, to these expeditions because I think yun yung isa sa pinaka-salient na point in terms of joint ocean expedition or marine scientific research expeditions. Even the expedition of Vietnam and the Philippines, wala dong geological surveys. Primarily because there is a possibility of finding a mineral or an oil deposit, and then yun yung pwede magsimula ng gulo. So the joint expeditions were very
Jumanji. Magjujumanjian na kayo dyan.
Yes. So
walang alis dito.
Biglaan na lang. Ito na.
So pag nakasama pala yun doon sa research natin sa Vietnam, tapos merong they found oil, all hell will break loose na.
Kaya nga dapat klaro yan sa kontrata.
Yun.
Pero ang problema, Mark, ayaw din i-divulge yung kontrata because it could contradict some of our constitutional provisions. Just to simplify this, no, Mark, because yung sa ating saligang batas, parang inaangkin din natin yung ating exclusive economic zone. So it makes it very hard for us to also do resource sharing. Kaya nga service contracts lang pwede katulad ng Malampayan, no? Just to simplify it. And then yung JMSU hindi nag-work kasi nga may secret clause and all. And the Duterte tried to do the same. Walang gusto mag-sign sa DFA kasi baka makasuhan sila mamaya. So it's a very, very sensitive issue. But just to tell you, the Energy Information Agency of the US estimates that doon sa Reed Bank ang potentially biggest deposits ng oil and gas. Kaya nga, over the past decade or so, ang mga Chinese ay naghaharas sa atin because we contracted with the British and an Australian company later on, kasama dyan yung Philex, no, to do some exploration, pero hindi tayo hinahaya ng mga Chino. So effectively, what's happening is that patapos na yung Malampaya, tapos naka-shotgun tayo dyan sa Reed Bank. So essentially, you have a time bomb and a shotgun and they're asking us to jointly share it. Yan ang malaking problema. But no one wants to sign it because it's potentially treasonous. That's why we're in a deadlock. Just to give you an idea of how complicated this issue is
yung
from
sa
a legal
Chinese, paano yung sharing that they want? Para doon sa if ever merong mahanap na oil doon sa Reed Bank.
First of all, they want us to recognize their sovereignty.
Okay.
Which is a big no. Because it will contradict our arbitration award and our constitution. Sorry, Dio, I'm jumping in because this is also my area.
No.
Yeah. So just to be clear on that, no. So malaking issue dito is that kaninong sovereignty yan? Sino mag-adjust, diba? Yan ang problema. Either it's mine or yours. We cannot say we have shared sovereignty. There's no such thing. Unless it's joint development agreement, but you recognize that we have overlapping exclusive economic zone. Yung China, Hainan yung pinakamalapit, 800 nautical miles away yan. So, ang gulo yun eh. Kaya it's really a headache. It's really a complicated issue.
Kaya din yun yung problema dun sa sa mga illegal MSR or marine scientific research activities na ginagawa ng China ngayon. Kasi when you apply for an MSR, dadaan ka sa proseso and there's really transparency in it. And one of the requirements is for a Filipino group of researchers to be partnering with that foreign institution coming into the Philippines. Ibig sabihin, malinaw doon anong klase ng data, anong equipment na
vetting
gagamitin,
process,
paano yung material sharing, paano yung information, paano yung utilization, anong mangyayari if we actually find resources, anong mangyayari if we actually find patentable products. Lahat yun kompleto. So, China is doing illegal MSRs. Yes. So,
ayaw nila yun.
It is just to make sure that the Philippines will not be on the disadvantaged part of the contract na tayo makikinabang because again, it is in the EEZ of the Philippines and therefore the Filipinos should be in the forefront of actually profiting or benefiting from this. So ginagawa ngayon ng China, meron kang 3 research laboratories na nasa West Philippine Sea. They've been discovering already a lot and probably dinadala na nila ng mainland and they have these research vessels coming into our areas and possibly also doing geological surveys without our knowledge. Tayo ngayon yung and probably that's one of the reasons kung bakit talaga gusto nilang i-push back yung kanilang boundaries because they know that there's a lot of resources out there. Yung nga lang tayo parang baka nga meron pero hindi natin alam kung ano, diba? So I think that's where the information is really coming into play. Na kailangan alam natin kung ano.
Mark, you wanna ask about Dolomites? Mga ganun.
Sige, pwede.
Sige, okay. Ito na. Let's go to the meat of the discussion. Lahat
I just came from Cebu eh. So sa Cebu, pag dadaan ka doon sa mga kalsada doon, sa side of the road, makikita mo ang dami dolomite, nakakalat lang doon.
Kaya pala
pinagkakaguluhan dito sa Manila eh. Pero sa Cebu, nasa mga bakuran lang nila yung dolomite, ang dami.
So bilang isang marine scientist, anong take mo sa dolomite?
I think naging complicated na kasi yung issue, no? But going back to the real issue of Manila Bay, ang question kasi is para saan ba talaga yung dolomite? If they want to call it, if they are saying that it's rehabilitation project, it's a big no. We are against it. It's really not rehabilitation. So don't call it rehabilitation. If they're calling it beautification, then okay, yan yung goal mo eh, beautification. Now the second thing
Emeldification.
Emeldification basically it's for me as a scientist, it's very useless because one, we have very limited resources. kung ang gusto natin is rehabilitate, then let's go back to the root causes of the problem. And putting white sand or putting dolomite on the beach will not solve the ecological and environmental problems of Manila Bay. Especially with that amount. You remember kami, naging issue dyan ng malaki with DNR kasi sinabihan kami bayaran. But MSI has only, sabi sa amin, binabayaran kami ng pagkalaki-laki. MSI only received 350 plus million for the past 10 years.
Tayo kayo ng dolomite over the past 10 years versus last year.
Diba? Dolomite received what? 370 for the past year or 2 years? So, ang amin doon, parang sana ang dami nang narating ng 370 million or 370 plus million given
mental health
where we are.
Mental health. It's good for mental health.
Okay.
You cannot put money on mental health.
Sige, pero parang mas na-stress yata yung ako. Anyway, pero yun.
Ano ang magandang ilagay doon sa kung hindi dolomite, ano ang maganda dapat nilang nilagay doon sa stretch na yon ng Ross Boulevard?
Wala.
Okay.
Wala. Kasi the hydrography, the oceanography of the Manila Bay itself, kaya nga siya nilagay ng harang, di ba? Kasi talagang whatever you put out there, hihigupin yun pabalik ng dagat. Because that's the natural topography of the... And let's be clear with Manila Bay and Ross Boulevard. It was just done in Ross Boulevard. Manila Bay is from Cavite to Bataan. That's the entirety of Manila Bay. So when we talk about rehabilitating Manila Bay, it should not just be focused on one section, a few hundred meters of Ross Boulevard. It should actually be going into the more important ecological areas. Andiyan na Papachea,
Hindi yata natutuwa si Mark sa sinasabi mo.
So yun.
Bias.
Again, I'm coming from the point of ecology. And for us, really, there's no other way to confront the problem but going back to the real causes of the problem. Imagine the Philippines is now recognized as the 5th contributor of plastics pollution, and the 4 rivers that are most contributing, 6 rivers contributing to plastics pollution in the world is found in the Philippines, and 4 of them is in Manila Bay. So, yun pa lang parang asan yung prioridad natin, 'di ba? Asan ano ba talaga yung gusto nating i-solve dito?
Mental health.
So yun lang naman.
Health.
Sabi nga i-quote ko yung director namin. Our director was very busy that day with Yusek Antipota. Sabi niya, kung marami tayong resources, yung beautification is not a problem. But we don't have a lot of resources and we are in the middle of the pandemic right now. At yun nga wag natin kasing ilihis yung mga tao na sinasabi natin that this is actually rehabilitation because it's not. And is it actually science-based? It is also not. And as a scientist myself in this country, it is difficult to be a scientist because we are seldomly being heard. At talagang hindi naman, tatanungin kami, but are we being considered in all of the decision-making processes? No. Pero yun nga ito sana yung magandang point of collaboration of different government agencies. They could have just asked us, they could have just asked. They could have come up with a technical working group. Okay, what's the best way to approach Ross Boulevard or Manila Bay? And there would be a lot of suggestions na more economically viable and actually long-lasting yung effect sa environment. So yeah, I stand with my institute's statement that the dolomite is actually it should not be the priority that we have right now, and it is not rehabilitation.
Mark, ano ang statement bilang president ng Pro
It's the
Dolomite?
White Sand Philippines. Ako naman.
Go.
Yung idea is maganda, yung beautification. Yun nga, tama naman sinabi mo, it's not rehabilitation, it's beautification. Sa akin lang, ang naging problema ko lang, yung pag-implement. Kasi yung unang lagay, inaalon din So I think ngayon mas naayos nila, pero dapat siguro simula pa lang, mas inayos na nila na hindi inaanod. So ayun, nando na yan. So I'm not sure kung tatagal din yung nandyan ngayon kung naayos nila yung pag-anod. So,
I mean, even the geologists and the physical oceanographers agree with this. Na parang yung dolomite doon, yes, it's beautiful for a couple of months, pero will it stay? And is it actually an intelligent use of our resources? Kasi I bet a couple of years from now, mawawala dito sa white sand. Unless i-concretize mo yung buong bay, di ba? Kasi ganun talaga yung area That's how nature works in that particular part of Manila Bay, in Ross Boulevard. And yung engineering doon, I don't know if it's actually adapted to the condition of Ross Boulevard itself.
Enjoy na natin habang nandyan pa. Bukas na bukas, pupunta na ako dyan.
Sarado ngayon.
Sarado, di ba?
Sarado. Diba nagka-issue kasi sobrang dami ng tao? Kaya sinarado nila.
Sino ulit yung DNR USEC ba yun? Nagwala-wala.
Antiporta.
Nagmura-mura. Ano ba background nun? May alam ba yan sa environmental science? Engineer yun, di ba? Kilala mo ba yan? Yung USEC na nagmura-mura yata or ano?
Was that Antiporta?
Di alam ko USEC Antiporta was used to manage a tabloid, I think.
Sa media si Benny.
Magaling ang caliber ng administration na to minsan. No? But in fairness kay Secretary Esperon and also Secretary Lorenzana, they have done something. Now let's go forward looking, no? Magto 2 hours na tayo. Magaling, mahusay. Mark, may tanong ka ba before we go to the policy recommendation?
Kasi, yung sa Dumaguete.
Yan Dumaguete, yeah.
I'm really invested in that issue also. Not so much doon sa coral reefs and sa environment. Although syempre super important 'yon. Kasi ang concern ko din is it's going to be another Pogo Island na parang island na kontrolado nila yan. For national security yung aking concern. Pero syempre ang itanong natin kay Dio yung sa coral reefs doon sa Dumaguete. Kapag tinayo yung 174 reclamation doon sa area na 'yon. So what is the stand of your organization tungkol dito?
Balikan ko yung sinabi ni Richard kanina kasi sabi niya yun nga yung losses natin versus the investments coming from China. It's the same thing. It's the same concept in Dumaguete.
Imaginary investments. Let's be very clear.
How much
Actual
are we
loss
getting?
versus imaginary.
How much are we really getting from the environment? Ilang tao ang nakikinabang? And if you're gonna look back into the demographics of Dumagueños, Dumaguete, most of them are actually small fisher folks.
Right.
And the small fisher folks depend on the bounties of the sea, on the productivity of the corals that they find within the municipal waters. And these coral reefs are the one feeding most of the people or the citizens of Dumaguete. At pag tinayo mo naman yung reclaimed area, how many of these people will actually benefit? How many of them will actually get food from the reclaimed island? Mas ganun na lang mas ganung concept na lang yung tingnan natin. Of course, it's very difficult to put values into things right now kung ilan nga ba talaga because it's very predictive. But this ecosystems, ang problema sa kanila, once you destroy them, you will never be able to revert them back into their to revert them into their original state. So yun yung problem talaga. And secondly, Dumaguete is the Philippines itself is a diverse country. It's a mega diverse region.
Right. Meta-diverse.
Yeah. Ito yung hindi na-realize and I always remind people and Filipinos when I give talks. We are a maritime country. We need to root back our relationship with the seas. Yung dagat, kaya meron tayong manamo We are being reminded how archipelagic and how islandish our nation is. So, yun, sana balikan natin yung ganung konsepto na parang gaano ba tayo ka-dependent sa bounties na nakukuha natin sa dagat. And I think, I know marami pang problema yung sa Dumaguete, but ang problem din namin is that yung nagpropose kasi ng reclamation, ang kanilang proposal is to do restoration. And again, MSI already released a statement on this. You cannot do reclamation at that scale. You cannot do restoration at that scale. Yes. Nagre-work lang, merong mga studies on restoration but they're very, very small scale. But for that scale of damage, masyadong malaki yun to restore the ecosystem. It will not work. So the best way to actually conserve and preserve is not to destroy it. And we're standing on that ground.
Yeah, keep it virgin. May tanong ka ba dyan, ibang Mark na ibang questions?
I'm good.
No, what about Boracay and other kind of tourist destinations in the Philippines? Ano yung mga or Palawan for that matter? Di ba may mga SOS din few years ago na medyo delikado na rin Palawan in terms of ecological stability dahil sa tourism and all. Can we have sustainable tourism? Do we have role models? I'm not sure Boracay is one, but about Siargao, the new star. Can you, as a marine scientist, can you give us some idea about that? Kasi medyo may pagka Department of Tourism level lang kami dito sa Project Pilipinas. Just in case,
I think naman ako on the personal opinion again. I think all initiatives and efforts to help reduce the stress being experienced by an island are all welcome. They're all appreciated, diba? But what we are pointing out is that the approaches that we are implementing should be science-based. Ang nangyayari kasi mahilig tayo sa copy-paste. Parang, nag-work kasi sa gantong isla, then baka mag-work sa ganito. I think that's the problem. Kasi each island would have its own characteristics.
Yeah,
and the
unique.
only way we can, yes, the only sustainable way we can restore or at least rehabilitate an island is to also understand its ecology and its people. Yun yung problem. Most of the management approaches look at people as part of the problem, not part of the solution. When in fact, the people or the communities should actually be part of the planning process. Halimbawa, yung nangyari sa Boracay, ang naging problema doon, nilockdown mo yung buong isla eh. Paano ngayon yung mga tao nakadepende doon sa turismo? And the second thing is that, are the approaches that implemented actually, are the effects actually long-lasting? Siguro nawala yung problema for a couple of months kasi wala kang tao. Pero after nun, pag bumalik yung mga tao, yung approaches ba na nilagay mo, would they actually prevent the same problem from happening again? And I think most of those none. Kasi yung approaches itself, they are not sustainable and they are not adapted to the locality of the community. So, is yung mga ganong klase ng issue no, na dapat natin tingnan. I thank you for bringing up Palawan kasi nagiging problem na siya kasi totoo naman na malaki yung influx ng tourists. No? And I think ang opportunity ngayon is that because Palawan is still growing, there's a lot of rooms for improvement. And as early as now, we should already be considering the more sustainable options. And sana lang, yung ating mga
Sir, can you give us
LGUs,
an idea, like when we say sustain, like limitahan yung numbers of tourists or like?
halimbawa, ito na lang ha, easement zone. So, when you do coastal planning, meron kang easement zone. Ibig sabihin, a certain meters from the sea, I think 100 meters, dapat wala kang structure dyan. Kasi talagang with sea level rise.
Zoning talaga.
Yeah, zone. Nasa batas natin yan, but we are not even implementing it correctly. Bakit siya importante? Kasi yung sewage mo, if your structure is just a few meters away from the sea, saan pupunta yung sewage mo? You cannot collect all. There would always be leakage. Kahit na meron kang tangke, hindi naman makukollect lahat yan. Some of them will actually leak into the ocean. Pero if you're 100 meters away, at least you can have a buffer zone. So yung mga ganong klase ng konsepto na these are scientifically proven and actually demonstrated to be sustainable, pero hindi naman natin ini-implement. Bakit kaya? So yung tanong na doon pagdating sa LGU, no? Kasi minsan yung LGU mas malakas pa kaysa sa agencies eh. Mas malakas pa si mayor kaysa sa DNR.
Of course,
hindi
kasi sila yung andun sa on
diba?
The ground.
So minsan nga hindi nagbibigay ng clearance sa DNR pero si mayor nagbibigay na lang ng clearance kung ano nung structure na yung tumatayo. So I think we have a lot of problems from bottom up or from the grassroots level hanggang sa from the ground. Pero yung problem is that we should also be considering the participation of the communities. And alam nyo, ito lang, segue na ano lang, if you go back into the communities, they know more about their environment and they actually know more how to preserve and conserve it. Kailangan lang nila ng tulong. Kasi sabi mo nga kanina, Richard, kapag pinapili ka na, kinabukasan o ngayon, siyempre, kung gutom ka ngayon, pipiliin mo ngayon.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
And I think, So I
you
think
have to reconcile yung short-term versus long-term calculations.
Yes. It should not be a question of ecology versus economy. We could actually have a viable and sustainable economy. Yes.
Right. What about Siargao? I mean, people are saying maybe this is the better way of approaching it. It's the new star. I mean, do you have any idea? Have you visited? Hindi ko pa ako nag-visit. But
I visited Siargao.
They say it's much better daw in Boracay and all of that. Yeah.
I haven't really done much reading about Siargao, but personally, on my experience, yes, I would say that Siargao is a nicer place for me because it's more quiet. There are more things. Pero I cannot say more than that kasi hindi ko naman alam pa yung sitwasyon ng Siargao for now. We also need to consider the size of the island din kasi and the resources within the island. The Boracay Island is very different. It has very different ecology. It has very different resources compared to Siargao. So yun nga yung problem eh. If we try to implement the same policies we have in Island A to Island B or for example Boracay to Siargao, doon tayo magkakaproblema because not all islands or made the same way.
Dapat tailored. Bespoke.
Yes, dapat talaga tailored. And again, dito ko naman ipapasok and that's where the scientists should come in. Kaya dapat talaga merong malaking interaction, malakas na interaction,
mga LGU,
collaboration.
Gwen Garcia, paki-hire ito sa lahat ng mga LGU dapat nagro-rotate kang consultant eh. Before we go to the end, I want to talk about some other very important issue. Very, very important. Because I mean, for me as a political scientist, this is like the defining issue, right, for the years to come because it has many multiplier effect, and that's climate change. This is really serious and scary. There are two things that scare me. One is AI, where this thing is going, can get out of control, especially under China and those countries. But the second one is really climate change, and China is still a part of that. Not a hater. I'm just being honest about assessments. What do you think about climate change? Because if you look at the negotiations, COP26 among others, I don't know. It seems many governments are struggling to make big commitments. China didn't even send their president, or the president didn't send himself. Biden, we don't know if he can really pull this off, with the Republicans likely coming back soon. Hindi naman pwede na umasa lang tayo sa Europeans or the Japanese. Then you have India, Sub-Saharan African coming up. Mukhang 1.1 degrees na already tayo, no, from pre-industrial levels. 1.5 was our target. Mukhang malabo yan. So I think more realistically, we're looking at 2.5. Some of the numbers I'm seeing are scary. Jakarta, Calcutta, Bangladesh, a lot of it could be completely underwater by the end of the century as things move forward. Parts of Manila could be like Venice, right? We see that. Not in 100 years, but it could be in 50 years or less. How serious this issue of climate change is, because it's really going to hit us in the face in ways that we have not even imagined, as bad as things could be. And the Philippines is among the top 10 most vulnerable countries to climate change, based on HSBC study, climate risk index study. So you can say I'm passionate about this, not because I'm a climate scientist, but from the basic understanding I have, this can get really scary and has economic, geopolitical, even ideological impact. I mean, people are going to be apocalyptic, right? When things go really scary and all, which is going to be the case. You as a scientist, as a natural scientist, as a Filipino, right? You're looking at this storm coming, this mega storm coming. What is your assessment? What do you think we should do? What we are doing right? What we're doing wrong? Where we can improve? And that kind of feeds into your next final points, which is policy recommendation for the next admin. I'm not sure Isko is talking about this as much, or Lenny, or Bongbong, or Sara, or Bato. But I think this is really going to be a defining issue for millennials, especially younger millennials and Gen Z, and our children. Yeah, and our children.
It is our generation who will be suffering more.
Yeah. Although medyo nag-enjoy na tayo before, we're gonna be in 40s probably before this gets really crazy. Yeah.
No, I did my PhD in the Arctic and the North Pole, so I had the chance of actually going into the Arctic. The first time I went there was in 2013. Ang goal kasi namin is always to go to the North Pole, go to the part of the area with the thickest ice. So in 2012, when we went there, nahirapan kami maghanap ng ice. From the north of Canada, we were just directly sailing to North Pole. It was in North Pole that we found the thick ice. What did it tell us? Talagang climate change is happening. No, alam mo, before ako pumunta doon, sabi ko, I know climate change, but when I saw what happened in the Arctic,
it hits you.
Yeah, no, iba yung reality eh. And when I came back to the Philippines, it became more serious for me because I'm from Palawan, and many coastal parts of Palawan have already eroded. And many studies are showing that because this erosion is associated with sea level rise. And predictions would say that many parts of Palawan, I lived in front of the sea, I live on the beach. My family is on the beach.
This is home,
This is not an abstract problem for me anymore. Nakita ko kung paano yung kapitbahay na nasa harap namin na wala ng tahanan in the past 10 years. Susunod na yung amin doon. And these are real problems of Filipinos. Second, may effects sa geopolitics? Yes. Because how we define our baselines are based on the coast. So how are we going to define our baselines when sea level rise actually come in? Ang problem din sa atin ngayon,
one second, Dio. Baka mawala daw lahat ng mga fake islands ng China. Baka climate change will solve South China. Lahat yan,
alam mo, sabi nga namin dati, we always jokes niya, Mother Nature will provide. Mother Nature will do the work.
She can be a bitch to bad people, right? Like,
she can really be a bitch.
Sorry about that. It's like, gago kayo eh. Yeah, but going back again, so you're saying you can see your
it's our time.
You're seeing your communities. Yeah.
Yes, it's not an abstract for us anymore. Especially sa highland communities din, sa upland communities, sa Baguio, for example. They are experiencing more drought. They're experiencing actually more warmer conditions. They're experiencing hotter summers. And this actually directly affects...
Or sobra yung rain bigla. Kasi when we say climate change, it could be extreme.
Both.
Super cold and then damning hot, diba?
Yeah. So I agree with you. We are the top 10, but we are also really the victim on this. And I see the problem, and I really see. Ako kasi I always come from the perspective of science, of coming up with numbers eh.
Yeah.
When you talk to politicians, yes, mga lip service nila na, yeah, I know this, I am
Blah,
very
blah, blah.
passionate about this. Pero ilan sa mga Pilipino ang apektado na ngayon? Ilan sa ano ang area ng Pilipinas na actually lumulubog na? Kapag hindi natin alam at hindi natin nakikita, hindi natin kasi pinapahalagahan. And I think one of the good things that have happened in the past years in terms of scientific research and climate change, alam niyo Project NOAA? Project NOAA was a project of USC that wanted to look at and predict how much disasters and how much...
Kay Pinoy yan, di ba? Kay Pinoy yan, di ba?
Pinoy.
Yeah.
Diba? Si ang project head nun si Dr. Lagmay. The project was absorbed by the University of the Philippines. It is turned into an institute called the UP Resilience Institute. The idea is to really expand the scope of NOAA and understand how much flood are we getting, how much typhoons are coming into the Philippines, how much of the country will be affected, how much of it will be submerged. So again, data is very important because we cannot come up with policies, appropriate and operational and applicable policies if we do not know what is happening on the ground. And it is the data that will actually tell us.
Blind tayo. Blind talaga tayo.
Even though we have the Climate Change Commission, we don't again have the data. Ako bumabalik ako sa datos kasi yun naman talaga ang basihan nating lahat. Ilan ba sa mga Pilipino ang maapektuhan? And that's how we prioritize things. Saan ba sa Pilipinas ang maapektuhan? And that's how we prioritize things. We also have not really woven our laws and policies into climate adaptation. Andun pa tayo sa part na kung makikinig ka sa conferences ng mga agencies and even the politicians, yung mindset nila, mangyayari pa lang ito. When in fact, it is already happening.
We're already in the middle of the zone, the war. Yeah.
Yes, we are. We are already in the middle. The battle has already started. And yet, nagpaplano pa lang tayo dun sa pagdating. And I think it's very late for us to do that. So, ang bagal-bagal natin. No? And yung in terms of commitment naman, ako kasi biased ako dun sa fact na Philippines is very small. Why do we need to do all the job when the larger countries should actually be
but Dio, just to correct you on that, we are actually above average for middle income countries. I think we're in the 75th percentile. So while we're not as big as China or US, actually compared sa level of development natin, and remember we're 10, 15 million people. Actually our footprint is not that. We're not Maldives. We're not Barbados. And let's just be honest, hindi tayo ganun ka-innocent din. I mean, just look at the plastic pollution, all this sachet stuff they're finding. I think it's Indonesia, Philippines, China. Talo pa natin ang China.
But actually, I also have an argument about plastics. I think for the longest time, we just accepted the fact that we are the largest contributor, the third largest contributor, when we actually don't have the data. The Yambik paper
so you're questioning the data?
Yes, I am. I am questioning that because that was based on inference on per capita index. Sinasabi nilang doon na kapag mas marami kang population that is actually living on the coast and you have a country that is poor and do not put on resources on recycling, then there is a higher possibility for these communities to actually leak their waste into the marine environment.
Pero mahilig tayo sa maliliit na sachet kasi hindi natin afford yung malaki, di ba?
Pero ang problem ko dito is that sino ba dapat ang sisihin natin? Those who are actually using or those who are
companies. I'm not blaming consumers that much. I'm blaming companies.
When we accept kasi the fact that we are the third plastic polluter, ibig sabihin nun, we're also accepting the blame that most of the responsibility should fall on us. Pero kung titingnan mo, sino ba ang largest plastic producers? India, Europe, US, Japan, China. So ang question dito, kapag ba after they sell it and after they profited from it, yun na ba yun? Tapos na usapan, should the responsibility actually fall to us when they're actually benefiting from us? Same question ko din kasi sa climate change na commitments.
I see where you're coming from.
Pero I agree with you. Ang footprint natin is not
we're not innocent. That's what I'm saying.
Yeah, we are not.
We're not
gago,
but we're not innocent too.
Yes,
I'm just saying.
I agree with you on that. Pero yun din na parang probably yung commitment mas mag-expect siguro ako dun sa mas malalaki. Pero it's good that we are doing our own. We are ang problem kasi doon when we commit in the same level as the larger countries, we are also inhibiting the possible and the potential growth of the country.
But are we? I mean, that's not the sense I get in the negotiations. I think this year we sent, because we just had an interview in GMA with one of the representatives, and they were actually happy that we sent Dominguez. Because I was thinking like, why are we sending Dominguez? Why not Sano? Even in the past, DNR. But actually, it makes sense. He's there to collect money. Like, kayo, mga puti, tsaka yung mga bagong industrialized, Magbayad kayo sa amin kasi kailangan naman ng pera. I think we're looking at $100 billion.
Which is a good thing, right?
We need someone to collect the money.
It is a good thing. But, when we talk about climate change, we should also be talking about the role players in mitigating climate change. And andyan yung environment, andyan yung West Philippine Sea, andyan yung coral reefs, andyan yung mangroves, andyan yung seagrass beds. And we should also be looking at that. Kaya nga sabi mo kanina, magkano ba ang value ng marine capital ng Pilipinas in terms of how much should we be getting? There was an estimate in Pernea in 2017. It amounts to 24 trillions.
Yeah.
24 trillion. It can actually, feed the entire
dollars or pesos?
That was pesos. That was pesos.
But still, I mean, that's almost, that's half $1 trillion.
Magkano ba ang GDP ng Pilipinas, right?
Exactly. It's like 600.
If we can just sustainably manage it, then it's good. Pero hindi din naman dahil sinasabi ko na we should be expecting more commitment from the larger countries that we are not going to do our own part. It's good that we are doing our own part. It's good that we are actually committing ourselves. It's good that we are cutting down on our carbon footprints. And I think yung problem nga natin dito is that wala tayong, again, data. Ano ba yung dapat nating pina-prioritize? Ano yung dapat nating una? Kasi ando pa din tayo sa mindset na parating pa lang siya, it's coming. Pero actually, andito na siya. We should already be gearing towards mitigation. Yeah. So ano na ngayon yung mga mitigation policies? Ano na ngayon yung mga, how are we going to adapt to climate change? How are we going to reverse the impacts of climate change? Kasi whether or not, mangyayari ang climate change. And we cannot do anything about it. We just need to be prepared when it arrives. Actually, it's already arrived.
Mark, ikaw, I mean, kayo, vloggers, ikaw sa campaign ka involved, how serious are people taking this issue of climate change? Kasi para sa akin, dapat medyo delikado ng Pilipinas dyan eh. Right? Ikaw, Mark, I mean, kamusta ang level of discussion sa inyo?
Directly with Yorme, pinag-usapan din namin. Kasi may mga, like you said nga, there's a article na 2050, parts of Manila could be submerged in
Venice
water.
Na tayo,
Yeah, and of course, ano ba tatamaan sa Maynila? Yung Tondo, yung pier area.
Right.
Saan siya lumaki. So, baliwala yung mga ginagawa niyang developments na yun kung in 30 years, submerged na sa tubig yung ilang parts doon. So, it is something na we have talked about na. So, I'm not sure lang kung kailan niya balak ilabas yung kanyang plano for this pag ganitong parte na. But pagkasama yan kasi yung pati doon yung sa yung nakasama yung sa Manila, yung sa Bloomberg, yung top 50 cities, kasama din yung part na yun yung sa
right.
Climate resilience. I just really wish that these candidates we have right now to invite scientists to come up with the environment agenda or science agenda,
and the journalists to be more literate in environmental science and pollution because they have power. Journalists are powerful, right?
Yes.
If Tulfo, even the non-journalists raise this issue, I think more people will pay more attention, di ba? Ikaw, Mark, personally, anong tingin mo dyan sa climate change? Nanonood ka ba ng mga apocalypse movies, mga ganun? I mean, just to give you an idea, yung nakita natin sa Yolanda is a once every 50 or 100 years event. We might see once every 500-year event happening 5 times a year, sometimes simultaneously. That's how scary some simulations
we don't have
are
ako personally, it's not part doon sa aking mga ina-advocate na So, ngayon kasi this is very helpful kasi dami ko ding natututunan pero wala tayong politician na nakatutok sa ganyan
wala pa. Wala pa.
We
can still change it, Mark, diba? I mean, you're influential, Mark. You're influential vlogger. I won't say you have the ear of Yorme, but you share each other's ears sometimes. I don't know. I mean, we are talking to each other. We are having these platforms. Scientists, social scientists, vloggers. I mean, there's not much of that in the Philippines. Hindi ako nag-iabang, but I'm saying like we should start doing this more. I mean, like sarap pag-usapan ng mga kagaguhan ng ganito ngayon. But
green champions maybe
climate
champion sa politika or celebrity or influencer or sa ganung mataas na level na like what we see sa ibang bansa na meron talagang mga people na ito yung kanilang
may Greta. We need a Greta, no?
We need the face no, doon sa issue. We need a champion on that.
Similar daw, parang si Al Gore 20 years ago.
Right.
Ano.
Pero
Or
siguro
DiCaprio.
magandang example din halimbawa ngayon, I don't know if you know about the Philippine Space Agency, right? The Philippine Space Agency started as a small
diba Ayala medyo involved din dyan? Ayala, parang narinig
they're one of the benefactors before, hindi ko na alam ngayon.
Wala na.
It's now an agency, it's now a department of its own. So nung nagsimula yun, maliliit na projects lang and parang hindi pa natin nakikita yung appreciation for the data being delivered by the satellites. Pero ngayon, nakikita na natin that it can actually be used to agriculture. It can actually be used to look at climate change.
Yung seasonal changes.
Seasonal changes. Ano bang mga areas yung affected, which are more vulnerable in these types of conditions. So, yung mga ganitong klase ng, ang maganda dito, the agency itself is not limited just to the scientists. They're working with other agencies. Talagang multi-sectoral yung approach nila in using the technology. Interagency. And I think these are opportunities for politicians to grab na parang to learn more, to actually invest more on this and to look at the possibility of more applications of these technologies. So sana mabigyan ng pagkakataon yung mga scientists to actually go and talk to politicians and the politicians to also listen to the scientists. The entire community is not, we have our own preferences, but I think I speak on behalf of the other scientists that when politicians come to us, we will be willing to help whoever they are to craft the science agenda. And sana mas mabigyan pa tayo ng maraming platforms.
Right. So this is we are now going to the end part of our podcast. Malapit na tayo mag 2 hours, di ba? We need to beat the Lord de Vera target. Thanks kasi Lord. So I'm very happy. We're almost there. So can you give us prognostics tsaka yung good, bad, and ugly pagdating sa Philippines environmental policy and generally science-based approach to policy making? Where did we get it right? Somehow good. Where did we kind of get it right but still wrong? And where are we need to level it up, mag next level tayo. Especially as a new admin is gonna come, whether it's another Marcos, it's Lenny, Isko, Pacquiao, whoever, or Bato.
Probably speaking very specific to where I'm coming from, the Committee of the Marine Sciences in the Philippines. Where did we get it right in the past years? We are now building the National Academic Research Fleet. It was a dream 20 years ago, and now it's actually coming into reality. And
the
National Academic Research Fleet
sa UP
the National Academic Research Fleet is equivalent to the UNOL. So para siyang malaking organization, academic institutions.
Parang academy pala to. Academy of Sciences, parang ganun. Sorry.
Hindi naman, parang organization lang siya ng mga research vessels. We will be distributing research vessels all over the country. Bakit siya importante? Because it will be beneficial not only to the marine sciences but also to other researchers, to other fields of research, meteorology, even geology. So that's actually a very good investment because providing platforms will also allow for more opportunities to scientists, to younger scientists. And going into that direction of discussion, I think it is also good. We've gone way more than what we have in the past 10 years in terms of opportunities for young scientists. I would like to actually share to you na mas marami na ngayon na gumagraduate na
estudyante. Yes, exactly.
Because our capital natin ang masters and PhD students. Ang problem na lang ngayon, siguro yung kailangan pa natin i-improve. Ang problem ngayon, we are producing a lot of masters and PhD. I don't know if it's also true in your field, Richard. We are producing a lot of masters and PhDs, but no one is absorbing them. Sa agencies natin,
yung labor market compatibility.
Yes. Meron pa ding mismatch between those who are sitting in the position and those who are actually qualified to sit in the position. And if we are able to recognize that we have scientists that can actually sit in these positions, we will really change the mindset of agencies. Ibig sabihin mas magiging science-based, mas magiging objective, at mas alam natin yung priorities natin. We'll be able to maximize the resources that we have. Ano pa yung mga investments natin in the past year? Nabanggit ko kanina, yung Philippine Space Agency. Nakala natin minamock siya dati. Kasi bakit? Ano daw ang gusto natin? Makapunta ng Mars? No. That these technologies are very much applicable to the local setting. And these are very good investments. Yung Deep Expedition, because even though it was just one expedition, ngayon pinag-uusapan na yung investment in deep sea research capacity. Pinag-uusapan na ngayon of actually coming up with a deep sea research vessel of our own. And that's actually a good thing.
Like
Kasi
made in Philippines, testament, ganun. Yung
I don't know
train,
if it's
ganun.
made in the Philippines later, but at least it is being operated and owned by the Philippines, right? So we can do whatever we want and explore all the resources that we have. That's actually a good investment. Yung UPRI, UP Resilience Institute. Andyan na din yung I would also like to commend the UST for this, the Department of Science and Technology. Kasi meron tayong program na tinatawag nating Balik Scientist Program. Filipinos who are trained abroad and who got their PhDs abroad.
Di ba? Yung head ng yung Salvana ba yan? Salvena?
Si Dr.
We got this under control, Mr.
Yes. Yes,
sana naman hindi puro ganun lang yung bumabalik.
Hindi naman. I'm a balik scientist myself. That's why I'm
I know, exactly. Like, I mean,
this.
having scientific skills is one thing, another having conviction and integrity is another.
And how to use
offense
those
to some
scientific
people.
skills is another, right?
Yeah.
So,
We got this under control, Mr. Scientist.
We got right in the past. Siguro yung magandang recommendation in the future, sa Canada, sa US, they have this, the scientific advisory boards. Actually for the Congress, for the Senate, and also for the other agencies. Bakit? Kasi, and I'm not talking about talking about the natural scientists. Kailangan meron tayong mga socio-political scientists who are actually trying to advise most of the politicians we have. Sana meron ganong klase ng mechanism where the scientists and the politicians will be given opportunities to talk more, to actually consult more with each other, and to also provide technical expertise. And hopefully the politicians listening to the scientists or to the experts. Kasi ngayon, uso-uso sa atin ngayon ng intellectual shaming, di ba? Smart shaming. Parang mali na bang maging eksperto sa panahon na to? Parang mali bang magbigay ng ekspertong opinion? Pero sana mabago natin yung culture na yun in the future. And it's not just the government, it's not just the politicians. It's actually the
We need shameless intellectuals. That's my answer. We need shameless. Wala silang pake. Sige, bash nyo kami. Go lang kami.
Siguro one of the last recommendations na ibibigay ko na lang, it's also, I think, two-way yung process eh. It's not just the government reaching out to the scientists or the experts. I think we also need to have more experts, and hopefully the new generation of scientists and experts and researchers being more vocal, being more opinionated, and actually being more aggressive in participation in nation building. Hindi dapat tayo nagpapakulong na lang doon sa apat na sulok ng laboratorio. Hindi na lang microscope dapat ang kinakausap natin sa gabi. We really need to reach out, and this is a recognition of the shortcoming of the scientists. We need to reach out. We need to make our science the basic language of the people. Kailangan makita ng mga tao kung saan pupunta yung taxes nila. Most of the research that we do are being paid by the taxpayers, and therefore the knowledge that we are generating should also go back to the taxpayers. And lastly, salamat nandito si Mark, no, because I think there's still a gap between the public and the experts, and I think the vloggers, the media people.
That's why I love Mark, because Mark is like
big
my ear to the ground. Yeah.
Yes, you ask the right questions that ordinary people can understand.
Lay
you
people,
help us laymanize. Yes, the lay people. You help us laymanize our science, our knowledge, the knowledge that we generate. I think yun palang yung appreciation natin for truth and facts and science. Sana mabago na on how we think of the future. Ayun, we can talk more about this for hours. Pero,
but this is just a teaser, Unfortunately, there'll be other issues in the future on the environment in West Philippines. So we will need you, as we will need also Jay and other people. So sadly for you, this is just a patikim lang, and we're gonna exploit you more. But I hope Mark appreciated this, because this is the beauty of long form, man.
True.
This is next level. I mean, short of a classroom, you're not gonna get anything like that. But our audience is gonna be in thousands.
After 2 years, maybe I'm not just talking with my fellow natural scientists. I am now, ikaw lagi na kitang kausap, and I am connecting to more social scientists, to more economists, to actually more, alam mo yun, so it's becoming really interdisciplinary and transdisciplinary, which is a good thing. And I'm very
let's bring in journalists, vloggers, like Mark, because they're very
influential. Gawa ka na din ng channel, Doc.
TikTok explainers.
TikTok explainers.
I'm actually a very shy person.
The obvious. The obvious. Sorry. Oh my God. Alam mo,
Basag
Tio,
trip to eh.
mas matandaan
Ano?
ka pala sa akin ha. Si Mark, ngayon lang yata ako nakita ni Mark na quiet lang ako. Kinig na ako. Wow.
Sorry.
I love your
Siguro,
energy, man. Ang ganda. I love your energy.
Trivia kay Mark siguro.
Ano?
Richard and I knew each other way back.
Oh,
since
from
college.
Baguio days.
UP
But
Baguio.
you're
Yes,
from
Baguio
Palawan
days.
pala, no? But you're
Yes,
pala from Palawan. I thought you're from,
I went
from
up to
Baguio, etc.
Baguio. I
Yeah.
went to Baguio.
But man, Tio, I love your energy. It's
Thank
absolutely amazing. It's really encouraging. I mean, I don't know kung anong basa ni Mark sa akin. Siguro ADHD tong gagawin to. Pero, but I'll tell you, like, I really get inspired with inspiring fellow Filipinos, mga balik scientists, people who are in the academy trying to reach out, not snub people who are smart. You know, I really appreciate, and Dio, definitely you're one of them. I mean, we would have loved to have you earlier. It's just that I don't know kung anong isla ka na naman or anong Guinness record na naman binibreak mo. So, thankfully, available ka. So, last week, biglang naisip ko, wait lang, si Dio na lang muna ang kunin namin. We need also a natural scientist with us because soon also we're gonna have journalists, Atom Aurelio. Hopefully, we'll have him. So probably I'll raise this issue of climate change because it's also close to his heart. He's very much in touch with the communities. He does a lot of documentaries on these issues. Yes. We're gonna have people, experts on troll farms, etc., on communication. So we're trying to bring a lot of people, and hopefully down the road, no, Mark, we're gonna have candidates and cabinet members among others. No, so this is the hope we have. This is just the beginning, God willing. But so far, so good. No, I think we broke the record. No, you know.
Sorry, Lord.
Sorry. Wala na si Lord. Wala na eh. Wala na siya. Next day na siya nag-reply. Pare, pasensya na. Wala na ako. Wala, inom siya ng inom eh. Tapos smoke pa siya. So hopefully, di ba Mark, meron ka ng office soon.
I'm building a podcast studio para sa amin ni Richard.
So in the future, Joe Rogan style, in person na tayo lahat. Upuan tayo. That way, mas madali pa magkantsawan and all eh. It's online, medyo may lag time and etc. Pero thank you so much, Dio. Thank you so much for
thank you very much.
Not only sharing, but really passionate. I was saying, siguro may mga iba ganun na response sila sa akin kung like I'm just vomiting stuff. Like, that's really good. I can see it comes from a deep place, as deep as the third deepest place, Mariana Trench and everything you have been through, no? And please continue loving the country. Thank you for not giving up on our bureaucracy, on our broken politics, etc. Because the Filipino people need people like you, right? And in our own little ways, ako, Mark, we're also trying our best, no, to get the right information out in the most entertaining, engaging way possible. So sa mga nakikinig dyan, tumis kayo ng 2 hours. Ayan, pag nag-gym kayo, ayan, sexy na kayo. So we have some people saying, sarap pala ng podcast na yun. Kasi pag traffic, lalo pag balik traffic na. This is perfect kind of podcast. You can listen 2 hours, you're gonna be an expert after 2 hours. Yeah. Promise yan. Pwede na kayo maging analyst yan. Pwede na kayo analyst. Thank you so much, Dio. Hope to have you soon again to discuss other issues.
Thank you very much.
But definitely, it's really our privilege and honor to have you among our guests. God bless. Thank you very much, folks. Project Pilipinas, episode 22, right?
22.
Okay, double 2. Yeah, that's very good. Maraming salamat. God bless. And hopefully you enjoyed this podcast.
Bye-bye.